Chapter 1322 Venturing into the Plain. The Stone Emperor laughed loudly, and said, "Who would have thought that such a place existed in this galaxy?" He formed a series of hand seals, and it wasn't long before a miniature carriage whizzed over. Rather than calling this a horse-drawn carriage, it was probably better to call it a bull-drawn carriage. This was because the carriage was drawn by a metallic purple-gold bull. This was none other than the Stone Emperor's extravagant carriage. Both the animal drawing it and the carriage itself were forged from a piece of saintly material. It was so profligate that it could barely be described by words. "Guys, there's no time to waste. Let's hop on the carriage first." The Stone Emperor was the first to hop onto the carriage, and his body shrunk back to its original of 3 inches tall as he did so. "Can't you expand the size of the carriage?" the North Emperor asked unhappily. "This is saintly material, so there's no way for me to control it," the Stone Emperor said with a shrug of his shoulders. "Are you guys getting on or not?" The others exchanged a glance before all jumping toward the carriage, their bodies shrinking in size as they did so. If they didn't shrink in size, there was no way they could fit into the carriage. Instead, they would end up standing on top of the carriage. Standing on top of a saint tool? No. Standing on top of 2 saint tools? Wasn't that seeking death? Moreover, that purple gold bull had already developed a bit of intelligence. Once it truly developed awareness, it would become a saint. Who dared to stand on top of it? Fortunately, it was simple for immortals to shrink down in size. Everyone shrunk to the height of 3 inches before hopping into the carriage. In fact, this was probably a chariot and not a carriage, as it had no roof. The exterior of this chariot was decorated with carvings of formations that exuded an ancient and profound aura. There weren't many people in the chariot, with Ling Han, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, Faceless, Yang Lin, Yu Ying, the Cloud Maiden, and Zhuo Quan the only people apart from the Stone Emperor and the North Emperor. No one else had the right to board this chariot. Although Yu Ying hadn't become one of the 9 kings, her strength had been clear for all to see. Meanwhile, Zhuo Quan was able to board thanks to his relationship with the Cloud Maiden. Otherwise, just his heavenly body tier cultivation alone wasn't enough to impress the Stone Emperor. Qi Huangji and the others obviously couldn't board the chariot. They were members of the enemy realm, after all. The fact that they weren't fighting against each other at this moment was already a sign of impressive restraint. However, this relative peace probably wouldn't last for much longer. The chariot sped forward at incredible speeds. Before long, they had already left the bulk of the cultivators far, far behind. They were truly speeding on ahead. Even Qi Huangji, Tuoba Dong, and the other king tiers couldn't keep pace with them. However, after advancing for half a day, they were still stuck in this barren plain. Casting their eyes around, all they could see was empty space. It was as if this plain was endless. Even so, they weren't discouraged. The larger this underground world was, the bigger and more astonishing the secret that it held. Groan. The chariot suddenly jolted as if it had struck something, almost turning over. Fortunately, it was being drawn by a bull that was forged from saintly material, making the ride extremely smooth. The chariot only jolted once before immediately regaining its balance. However, what on earth had it struck? One had to realize that ordinary materials would be crushed into pulp if they were struck by the purple gold bull. After all, it was a saintly material that was close to obtaining awareness. Perhaps the power of its strike hadn't reached the level of genuine saints yet, but it had definitely reached the consummate level of the Eternal River tier. The Stone Emperor stopped the carriage, and everyone hopped off to check out what they had hit. They found that there was actually a bump in this otherwise flat plain, and it was because the chariot had struck it that it had jolted. "There's blood," the North Emperor said solemnly. Everyone looked over, only to see that there was a crack in the bump. Blood was gushing from this crack, and an overpowering smell of rotting flesh wafted toward them. It was as if an old corpse several hundred years old was lying beneath this bump. Crack. A fissure instantly appeared on the earth, then another, and another. A web of fissures cracked open, and the earth started to tremor lightly. Pung! A large hand suddenly reached up from the earth. Like the evil beast from before, this hand was composed of numerous corpses. On the arm, there was a corpse whose stomach was sliced open and dripping with viscous black blood. It exuded a revolting smell. This arm pressed down on the earth such that the beast could pull its entire body from the earth. A revolting evil beast instantly appeared before Ling Han and the others. Like the evil beast that had been killed by the 4 Eternal River Tier elites, this evil beast was also at the Eternal River Tier. Although it was an evil beast, the aura that radiated from it was still tremendously powerful. It was as if this evil beast were a paragon of evil. This evil beast naturally saw the chariot and the cultivators, and it instantly drew a deep breath. A ferocious wind immediately lashed the surroundings, forming an overwhelmingly powerful suction force. Fortunately, it had inhaled, and not exhaled. Otherwise, if this evil beast had spat its revolting breath at them, they probably would have fainted right there and then. Ferocious winds whipped through the surroundings, yet the people on the chariot remained firm and unmoving. This chariot wasn't any normal chariot, but one that had been forged from 2 saintly materials. As such, how could it be moved by an Eternal River Tier elite? Charge, the Stone Emperor roared with a humph. He reached over and slapped the side of the chariot. The formations on the chariot's exterior instantly lit up, intertwining to form a dazzling halo of light. At the same time, the purple gold bull opened its mouth. Pooh! A streak of purple light shot out from its mouth toward the evil beast. This streak of light was astonishingly quick, striking the evil beast's chest and tearing open a gaping hole in it. However, the evil beast wasn't severely wounded because of this. Instead, it howled in anger, and swatted its giant palm at the chariot. Wang! Its giant palm arrived before them, yet a sheet of light suddenly burst from the chariot and blocked its strike. Meanwhile, the people in the chariot could clearly see that the giant palm of the evil beast was composed of 17 corpses. Some of the corpses were missing a head, while some of the corpses were missing limbs. There were also some that had viscous red blood flowing over their bodies. This was truly a repulsive and stomach-churning sight. If it weren't for the chariot, perhaps everyone here would have been sent flying by the strike. However, this chariot provided them with extremely sturdy protection. Meanwhile, the purple gold bull spat several more beams of light, dealing significant damage to the evil beast. However, the more wounded the evil beast became, the more violent and furious it grew. It was wild with rage as it launched a flurry of relentless attacks at the chariot. This evil beast had no intelligence, so it received more and more wounds from the attacks of the purple gold bull. However, it still continued to attack, showing no signs of wanting to retreat. Although it seemed like the 4 Eternal River Tier elites had disposed of the other evil beast very quickly, this was because the Wide Travel Monk King and the others were unfathomably powerful. Although this chariot was also extraordinary, its charioteer was only a heavenly body tier elite. Thus, the power that it could unleash was severely limited. Anyhow, the evil beast received more and more wounds, which it eventually succumbed to. It was blasted apart, transforming back into a field of broken corpses. Only now was it finally destroyed. The Stone Emperor hurriedly steered the chariot away from this place. The smell of the rotting flesh was simply unbearable. They continued to advance, coming across several more evil beasts. Some were more powerful than others, with the strongest being at the Eternal River Tier, and the weakest being at the Sun-Moon Tier. The Sun-Moon Tier evil beast was only composed of a dozen or so corpses. Moreover, it wasn't in a humanoid form, instead looking like a slightly larger boulder made of flesh. After advancing like this for a day or so, a sheet-thick mist suddenly appeared before them. They couldn't see through this mist no matter how powerful their vision was. The Stone Emperor stopped the chariot. Right now, everyone was wearing a hesitant expression. Should they continue forward? This place was extremely uncanny, and perhaps there would be fatal dangers if they continued forward. As long we don't come across living Genesis tier saints, this chariot can block anything, the Stone Emperor guaranteed. They all exchanged a glance before nodding slowly. Advance. Chapter 1323 Who am I? The chariot slowly advanced into the thick fog. This fog was truly thick. Standing in the chariot, they could barely see a meter in front of themselves. Moreover, if it weren't for the defensive barrier around the chariot stopping the fog from seeping in, perhaps it would be difficult for them to see each other as well. Ling Han reached over to grab the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's hand. If something terrifying were to appear here, he would immediately place his wife into the Black Tower. As for the others, that would depend on the situation. After all, they had only gathered together because they appreciated each other's talent. There wasn't any strong bond or friendship between them. The chariot continued to advance, issuing a loud rumbling as it did. This was the might of saintly material. Ling Han gazed forward. However, regardless of how wide he opened his eyes, the scene before him was still a picture of swirling fog. Even the eye of truth couldn't penetrate it. It was as if this fog were eternal. However, after a short while, the fog before them suddenly vanished, revealing a courtyard. Within this courtyard was a youth who was practicing sword techniques. He only looked 13 or 14, yet the aura that radiated from him was clearly at the mountain river tier. This was astounding. He was so young, yet he had already reached the mountain river tier. Wait, no. Ling Han hurriedly shook his head. He had clearly been in a chariot charging through a thick fog, so how had a courtyard suddenly appeared before him? How had a youth suddenly appeared before him? Huh? Where are the heavenly phoenix divine maiden and the others? Ling Han hurriedly looked around. However, where was the chariot? Where were the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, the stone emperor, and the others? They were nowhere to be seen. As he frantically looked around, the youth stopped practicing his sword techniques. He then also started to gaze around at his surroundings. His actions were identical to Ling Han's. Could it be that he was that youth? Ling Han raised his hand, and the youth also raised his hand. There was a dazed look on the youth's face. Has my divine sense left my body? Ling Han shuddered, and he was suddenly tugged toward the youth by a powerful force. However, the youth stood there unmoving as if he hadn't noticed Ling Han crashing into him at all. Pooh! The two of them collided together, yet neither of them was thrown to the ground. Instead, Ling Han was like flowing water as he fused into the youth's body. At this moment, he was completely fused together with the youth. No, they weren't fused together. Apart from his name, this youth didn't have any other memory. His mind was like a blank canvas. Thus, it was probably more accurate to say that Ling Han's divine sense had become the owner of this body. His mind was a bit hazy, and two names churned about in his head. One was Ling Han, and the other was Ding Zizhen. Who am I? Ling Han was a bit dazed. The memories that belonged to him were disappearing at a rapid speed. In the end, only one thought remained, that was, his name was Ding Zizhen. As for other matters, he didn't know anything. He ferociously bit his tongue. My name is Ling Han. This thick fog was an illusion formation that was subtly affecting his mind and body. I'll enter the Black Tower. This thought flashed through Ling Han's mind, yet he discovered that there was no Black Tower within his body. It was as if he had genuinely become Ding Zizhen. What's going on? I'm not Ding Zizhen, I'm Ling Han. Ling Han shouted in his mind. He was trying to remind himself of his identity. The fact that there was no Black Tower within his body was the greatest flaw of this illusion. Noticing this flaw allowed him to maintain his identity and awareness. Ding Zizhen. Several youths walked into the courtyard, and one of them said, "It's time for the clan competition. I suggest you obediently admit defeat. Otherwise, we'll beat you to the point that you can't cultivate for 3 months again. Hurry up and follow us. What are you lagging behind for?" These youths looked around 1 or 2 years older than him. Their cultivation was also above his. Ling Han discovered that his cultivation level was only at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. Meanwhile, the cultivation levels of the youths in front of him were at least at the medium extreme of the sun-moon tier. In fact, some were even at the high extreme or consummate level. However, Ling Han was unafraid. He possessed a power that surpassed 6 stars, and he had even perfected his comprehension of the regulations. Thus, his battle prowess could probably surpass 6 stars as well. He followed these youths, crossing through several pavilions and halls. This place was unbelievably large, and they only arrived at a training ground after walking for a long time. Many people were waiting there already, some of them old, some of them young, some of them male, and some of them female. The cultivation of everyone present was different, ranging from the mountain river tier to the sun-moon tier and to the heavenly body tier. The weakest individual was only at the shattering void tier. This was an infant that was being held in its mother's bosom. Gasp! They're at the shattering void tier at birth? Where the bloody hell is this? They're virtually immortals at birth. What stunned Ling Han even more was the fact that he saw the occasional person releasing their eternal river. These were definitely eternal river tier elites. However, like the others, they were obediently standing among the crowd. There was an elevated platform at one end of the training ground, and there were several people seated above this platform. Their faces were all shrouded in mist, making them appear extremely mysterious. Ling Han merely took a glance at them, yet he felt as if his divine sense were about to be ripped into shreds. They're far too powerful. These people could definitely blot heaven and earth with a hand, obliterate planets with a snap of their fingers, and destroy galaxies with a breath of air. Are they saints? Even eternal river tier elites could only stand by the sides of the training ground. Thus, the status of the people seated on the platform was definitely far above that of eternal river tier elites. If they weren't saints, what else could they be? In any case, saints were still divided into 4 categories. The people on the platform definitely weren't small saints. Perhaps they were great saints, or perhaps they were saint kings. Let the Ding clan's end-of-year competition begin. Following this loud announcement, pairs of cultivators entered the training ground and started to fight. The youngest cultivator was only 10 years old. Surprisingly, however, he was at the low extreme of the mountain river tier. This wowed the audience and won the praise of everyone. As expected of Ding Yaolong. He's the 77th generation successor of our ancient ancestor, and his ancestral bloodline is still relatively pure. He's only 10, yet he's already this powerful. He'll definitely become a powerful and influential figure of the Ding clan. This youth was incredibly powerful, being able to battle against cultivators at the high extreme of the mountain river tier even though he was only at the low extreme. In fact, after activating some kind of secret technique, he was even able to defeat an opponent who was at the early stage of the consummate level. Tide of the Ages. I never imagined that Yaolong was actually this talented. He's only at the mountain river tier, yet he can already wield the power of time. He's the fortune of the Ding clan. Meanwhile, the powerful beings on the platform nodded in praise. Ding Yaolong left the training ground to the sound of praise and applause. After several more rotations of battle, it was finally Ling Han's turn to fight Ding Zixian's turn, to be more precise. His opponent was also at the low extreme, though his cultivation level was slightly higher than his. He was at the middle stage, while Ling Han was only at the early stage. Moreover, he was one of the youths who had gone to call him just then. Obediently admit defeat, the youth commanded as he attacked Ling Han. Ling Han counterattacked, yet he instantly discovered that he had genuinely become another person. He didn't possess a powerful physique and defense anymore, and his power couldn't surpass 6 stars either. All the secret techniques that he had mastered had vanished as well. Right now, he merely possessed power at the early stage of the low extreme of the mountain river tier. Moreover, his battle prowess couldn't even surpass 1 star. Pung! After dodging several strikes, Ling Han was finally sent flying by a kick. Trash! While he was flying through the air, he saw his opponent mouth this with an expression of complete disdain. Ling Han collapsed to the ground in a heap. He tried to crawl up to continue the battle, yet a burst of agonizing pain suddenly shot through his body. He was unable to withstand this, and he instantly lost consciousness. When he suddenly jerked awake, he heard several cries of astonishment around him. He had returned to the chariot, and his surroundings were still blanketed by thick fog. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, Stone Emperor, North Emperor, and the others were all in the chariot. No one was missing. So uncanny. Chapter 1324 Dream. Did you guys also enter an illusion and discover that you had become a youth called Ding Zizhen? Ling Han asked. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was the first to nod in affirmation. The expressions of the others changed drastically. Then, they all nodded one after another. They described their experience, and sure enough, their experiences had all been exactly the same. They had become Ding Zizhen and entered a clan competition, where they had been brutally defeated. This obviously hadn't been a dream. Dreams couldn't be so realistic, and they couldn't be identical to everyone either. It's this blanket of fog. Everyone looked at the thick and persistent fog around them. This was a very easy conclusion to draw. It was definitely this fog that was affecting them. However, among everyone present, the lowest cultivation level was the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, while the highest cultivation level was the consummate level of the Heavenly Body tier. Yet, this huge discrepancy in cultivation level hadn't changed the fact that they were all caught off guard by the illusion at exactly the same instant. Moreover, they were all aboard a chariot that was forged from saintly material. In terms of defense alone, this chariot was even more powerful than elites at the consummate level of the Eternal River tier. However, they had still been affected by the fog. Could it be that this fog possessed saint-level power? They all looked at one another, deep frowns on their faces. Should we continue forward? This was the question on everyone's mind. Even the Stone Emperor was slightly hesitant. He was confident that his chariot could guarantee everyone's safety as long as no saint appeared. However, reality proved that this dense fog could still invade their minds and forcefully drag them into an illusion. There hadn't been any danger in the previous illusion, but who could guarantee that things would remain this way? They were all prodigies of the younger generation, and as long as they grew up without a hitch, their future would be limitless. It wasn't necessary for them to take a huge risk for the opportunities in this place. I want to advance for at least a little longer, Ling Han said first. Same, Faceless said. More and more of them nodded in agreement. They were all young king tiers, and thus they were extremely courageous and resilient individuals. At the same time, they were also incredibly curious individuals. This thick fog was like a puzzle that whetted their appetite to investigate. Then let's continue forward, the Stone Emperor said with a loud laugh. He started to steer the chariot forward. They were still surrounded by thick fog, and they still couldn't see their surroundings. However, at some point in time, the surroundings suddenly became clear again. What appeared before them was still that training ground. I've returned again? By testing whether he could sense the black tower in his body or not, Ling Han could determine whether or not he had entered the dreamland. He had become Ding Zizhen again. However, he was clearly older this time. This was probably 1 year into the future. However, his cultivation had barely increased at all. He was still at the early stage of the low extreme. Looking at the people from last year, however, they had all grown taller and stronger. They had all advanced at least one sub-minor level. The most impressive person was Ding Yaolong, who had already advanced from the low extreme to the high extreme. He had actually advanced 2 minor levels. He was only 11, yet he had already reached the high extreme of the Mountain River tier. This was simply incredible. Thus, it wasn't surprising that Ding Yaolong had become the most brilliant star in the intra-clan competition. Meanwhile, Ding Zizhen had become an absolute joke. This kid. If it weren't for clan elder Ding Gua sacrificing his source power at all costs to forcefully elevate him to the Mountain River tier, it would have been impossible for him to reach the immortal level in his entire lifetime. Yeah, he was only at the spiritual ocean tier when he was born. I've heard that only lowly commoners are born with such a low cultivation level. You know, I'm starting to doubt whether he's a genuine child of the Ding clan. Many people slandered him coldly, not showing any care and compassion at all, even though they were all members of the same family. The scene abruptly ended here, and Ling Han's vision became a blur as he returned to the real world. Everyone was awake now, and they were all wearing a look of displeasure. In that dream, they were Ding Zixian. Thus, Ding Zixian being humiliated was equivalent to them being humiliated. Could it be that this place was created by Ding Zixian? In that illusion, he's only at the mountain river tier. However, this thick fog can seep through saintly material and affect our minds. This is definitely the handiwork of a saint. He definitely experienced some incredible opportunity afterward, allowing him to flip the tables. The prodigies started to discuss their thoughts. Ling Han pondered for a moment before saying, "Did you guys take note of Ding Yaolong? Only 1 year passed, yet he advanced 2 entire minor levels." Everyone nodded in response. They were all prodigies of the younger generation, so their talent was naturally top-notch. However, how long would it take for them to advance 1 minor level? Even in the mountain river tier, this would take them at least several decades. Those who possessed essence divine flames like Qi Huangji had were outliers. As for people like Ling Han who possessed a reincarnation tree, that was even more freakish. The reincarnation tree would be a precious treasure even in the celestial realm. What on earth is this clan? The prodigies were all stunned. Not only had Ding Yaolong's cultivation advanced in leaps and bounds, but the cultivation level of the other people in the illusion had also advanced at an astonishing speed. A thought suddenly flashed through Ling Han's mind. Perhaps Ding Zixian is from the celestial realm? If this were the case, it would be understandable why the cultivation speed of the children in this clan was so fast. After all, they were using celestial techniques. In any case, Hunyao had advanced to the Genesis tier in only 5 years. Calling this astonishing would be an understatement. Let's continue forward. At this moment, everyone's interest was piqued. They all wanted to make sense of the situation. The chariot continued forward, and they were stealthily dragged into the illusion again. It was impossible for them to avoid this illusion. Another year had passed in the illusion, and it was time for the intra-clan competition again. However, Ding Zixian was still only at the early stage of the low extreme of the mountain river tier. In fact, such a situation would be standard in the immortal realm. Generally speaking, advancing 1 sub-minor level in the mountain river tier would take several hundred years. So, how could one be much stronger after just a year? However, in the Ding clan, everyone else's cultivation level had seen huge improvements. This was especially the case for Ding Yaolong, who had already advanced to the consummate level of the mountain river tier. During this intra-clan competition, Ding Yaolong wasn't simply impressive. Rather, he was able to place 10. He was the only mountain river tier cultivator in the top 10. Moreover, he had even defeated an opponent who was at the late stage of the low extreme of the sun-moon tier. Ling Han knew that Ding Yaolong had definitely reached the pinnacle level of the mountain river tier. Moreover, he had reached the peak stage of the pinnacle level. However, those at the peak stage of the pinnacle level would only possess power on par with the early stage of the low extreme of the sun-moon tier. Yet, Ding Yaolong had defeated someone at the late stage of the low extreme. Can I achieve this? Ling Han admitted that he could indeed exhaust such an opponent to death using his freakish physique. However, defeating such an opponent head-on? That would be impossible. Ding Yaolong possessed a secret technique that could age his opponent's attacks. That was right, age. When a punch was thrown, its power would naturally weaken with the passage of time. Eventually, it would lose all of its power. Ding Yaolong's secret technique could accelerate this process by hundreds, or even thousands, of times. Thus, his opponent's attacks would have already lost much of their steam by the time they reached him. Can he control time? Ling Han's heart thumped in excitement. Time was the most mysterious power. If he could wield the power of time, his battle prowess would increase by heaven knew how much. This was the intention of these illusions, to help them master the power of time? In any case, the result of the intra-clan competition was just as expected. Ding Zizhen was crushed, and his result was naturally the worst. The illusion ended, and everyone came to their senses at the same time. Some of them were dazed, yet some of them, like the North Emperor and Stone Emperor, had a glimmer in their eyes. Like Ling Han, they had also noticed Ding Yaolong's terrifying secret technique. Let's continue forward. Chapter 1325, Severing Mundane Tier. The chariot continued forward, and they were drawn into the illusion again and again. This was the path of Ding Zizhen's growth. However, the only memory that was recorded was of the intra-clan competition that occurred at the end of each year. This was probably his deepest and most agonizing memory. Ding Yaolong was still as brilliant as always, quickly advancing to the Sun-Moon tier and placing higher and higher in the intra-clan competition. Ding Zizhen was still the weakest, and he was still scorned and ridiculed by his fellow clan members. It was as if he would never grow stronger. Several years passed, and when Ding Yaolong reached the age of 16 years old, he stopped participating in the intra-clan competition. This was because he had already advanced to the heavenly body tier. The Ding clan had a rule, whereby those who had reached the heavenly body tier couldn't participate in this kind of competition any longer. However, he was still a dazzling prodigy who was liked and admired by numerous young women. One of these women was Ding Zizhen's secret crush. Ding Yaolong was extremely licentious, and he wouldn't reject any beauty that came running into his arms. It wasn't long before he got many women pregnant. However, he didn't plan to wed any of these women. He was the superstar of the Ding clan, so he had to marry someone who could match his status. As for the women in his clan, he was merely toying with them. The young woman who Ding Zizhen liked also became pregnant. However, after being rejected by Di Yaolong, she chose to take her own life. This infuriated Ding Zizhen, and he stormed off to seek a battle with Ding Yaolong. However, he was beaten black and blue by Ding Yaolong's followers before he could even meet him. In fact, he was almost beaten to death. Only after being bedridden for 6 entire months was he finally able to recover from his severe wounds. Once he recovered, he immediately left the Ding clan to travel around the world. He knew that if he stayed in the clan, he would never be able to surpass Di Yaolong. Thousands of years passed, and then tens of thousands of years. However, Ding Zizhen was still a weakling. His cultivation had merely risen from the early stage of the low extreme to the middle stage. Moreover, he was already transitioning from a young adult to a middle-aged man. Yet, the lifespan of cultivators at the low extreme was only 100,000 years. Right at this moment, however, Ding Zizhen's luck finally came. While exploring an ancient site with a group of people, the extreme dangers ended up killing everyone but him. However, it was also at this moment that he finally obtained a divine pill. After ingesting this pill, he not only lengthened his lifespan, but even elevated his physique and talent. This was a comprehensive transformation. Ding Zizhen had been severely wounded in his mother's womb, and it was because of this that he was only at the spiritual ocean tier at birth. This was unlike other clan members, who were all at the shattering void tier at birth. This congenital deficiency meant that his path of cultivation was as good as severed before it even began. In fact, he had only been able to advance to the immortal level because a powerful figure of the clan had forcefully elevated his cultivation. However, after ingesting the divine pill, he was able to mend this congenital deficiency, and thus began his journey of growing stronger. He finally started to receive the benefits of his hard work from before, soaring from the middle stage of the low extreme of the mountain river tier to the consummate level of the sun-moon tier in just 10 short years. Ding Zizhen's rapid advance didn't stop here, and after another 100 years, he advanced to the heavenly body tier. After 1,000 years, he became an eternal river tier elite. After reaching this level, Ding Zizhen could finally be regarded as a prodigy, even when accounting for the tens of thousands of years that had gone to waste. In fact, he could be regarded as a supreme prodigy. Only 50,000 years had passed, yet he had already become an eternal river tier elite. However, this wasn't the most astonishing part of his story. After another 10,000 years, he advanced to become a Genesis tier saint. Gasp! When the Stone Emperor and the others woke from the illusion, they all wore expressions of pure shock. In the illusion, Ding Zizhen had left his clan very early on. Thus, they had no idea what level the supreme genius Ding Yaolong had reached. However, becoming a saint in just 60,000 years. This was simply unparalleled. My father is transformed from a heavenly cloud stone that obtained awareness and the ability to cultivate. However, he only developed intelligence after being nurtured by heaven and earth for almost 10 billion years. Afterward, he cultivated for almost 200 million years before finally managing to reach the Genesis tier, the Stone Emperor said with a serious expression. My master reached the Genesis tier after cultivating for 300 million years, the North Emperor said. With these two figures as comparison, it was starkly clear that Ding Zizhen was an absolute freak. Could it be that a saint appeared in this galaxy in the past? And they were laid to rest here after death? Or perhaps he set up some formation here, thereby giving rise to the Mountain River Forest and Sun Moon Valley? It was with these feelings of curiosity and eager anticipation that they continued forward and re-entered the illusion. After becoming a saint king, Ding Zizhen returned to the Ding clan to challenge Ding Yaolong again. This time, he wasn't someone who could be beaten to the brink of death by Ding Yaolong's followers. He was finally able to battle against Ding Yaolong. The two of them exchanged ferocious blows, each unleashing their powerful techniques and strikes. However, once Ding Yaolong unleashed his secret technique, Tide of the Ages, Ding Zizhen was instantly forced onto his back foot. Although he also possessed powerful secret techniques, he was still eroded by the Tide of the Ages, losing at least hundreds of millions of years of his lifespan. Ding Zizhen was indeed powerful, yet Ding Yaolong was the true king tier. However, even though Ding Zizhen had suffered a resounding defeat, he was finally able to win the attention of the clan. He received priority nurturing from the clan, and was also set up to marry a woman from an extremely powerful clan that was on par with the Ding clan. Moreover, his fiancée was also a prodigy. The two clans decided to hold the wedding when Ding Zizhen managed to advance to the next major tier. Advance to the next major tier? The prodigies exchanged stunned looks when they woke up from the illusion. They were so shocked that they were unable to speak. Ding Zizhen is already a saint king. How can he advance any further? However, Ling Han was certain that the Ding clan was a force in the celestial realm. Thus, it was only natural that they would have elites above the Genesis tier. Anyhow, the realization that they were in the celestial realm also made it easier to swallow the fact that they were born at the Shattering Void tier and could advance one immortal realm cultivation level every few years. After all, Hunyo's achievement was even more astonishing. She had become a saint in just 5 years. The prodigies hurriedly advanced along the plain. They wanted to know whether Ding Zizhen had successfully broken through or not. Moreover, they wanted to know what major tier came after the Genesis tier. This time, Ding Zizhen struggled to break through, even though he was already a supreme prodigy. Ding Yaolong was even more prodigious than Ding Zizhen, yet he also struggled to advance any further. At this time, these two were already regarded as the twin dragons of the Ding clan. They represented the Ding clan's future. After a whopping 1 billion or so years, Ding Yaolong finally managed to break through first. After another 30 million years, Ding Zizhen also managed to advance to this completely new tier. Severing Mundane tier. They learned this from the delighted cheers of the members of the Ding clan. In a span of just 30 million years, the Ding clan had seen the birth of 2 Severing Mundane tier ancestors. This elevated the Ding clan's power and influence significantly. The Severing Mundane tier was broken up into 4 minor levels: the low extreme, the medium extreme, the high extreme, and the consummate level. This was identical to the previous major tiers. According to hearsay, one would need to sever their mundane carnal feelings a total of 4 times. After successfully completing this, one would gain the ability to accumulate and wield celestial qi. They would also enjoy the lifespan of heaven and earth, aging with the age of the universe. Ding Xijin had cultivated in absolute seclusion before finally managing to reach the severing mundane tier. After reaching this tier, he set off to travel the world. This would be the solo adventure before his marriage. Afterward, he would have to guard his clan and shoulder the responsibility of a grand elder. While adventuring, however, he came across a woman by chance, both of them falling in love at first sight. However, Ding Xijin's fiancée was famous for her domineering nature, so Ding Xijin didn't dare to take this woman back to the Ding clan. Instead, they decided to live together. 30,000 years passed, and Ding Xijin never ended up returning to the Ding clan. Instead, he chose to hide his identity and retreat to a home in the mountains with the woman that he loved, enjoying a life of peace and tranquility. Another 40,000 years passed, and he had a daughter with his wife. They named her Ding Ling. At this moment, however, his fiancée finally found him. She discovered that he had betrayed their engagement and married another woman, even having a daughter with her. She was naturally enraged, and she personally killed Ding Xijin's wife and daughter while he was away one day. Everyone woke from the illusion again, their faces stained with tears. These tears hadn't been shed because of their emotions, but because of the effect that Ding Xijin's illusion had on them. They couldn't help but feel an agonizing sorrow. It was as if their hearts were about to be torn into shreds. Chapter 1326 Final Will, Everything to Save My Daughter. Is this Ding Xijin's undying resentment? Beyond a saint, one would sever their mundane carnal feelings and enter the world of celestials. Was the resentment of Ding Xijin finally reappearing after billions of years? Saints aren't the most powerful. Apart from Ling Han, everyone else was shaking in shock. This revelation had destroyed their long-held beliefs. They were unable to accept this. Saints were the most powerful beings in this universe. Those who could defeat saints had to be saints themselves. Is this fake? Has Ding Xijin fabricated this himself? Even the Stone Emperor and North Emperor couldn't answer this with certainty. After all, once they accepted this to be true, their entire concept of cultivation would have to be restructured. Only Ling Han believed this with absolute certainty. This was because he already knew that there existed a celestial realm that was transcendent above the immortal realm. It belonged to the immortal realm, yet it was above the immortal realm. Hang on. If the immortal realm contains a celestial realm, then does the netherworld contain a demonic realm or something? No, that can't be. If one wants to enter the celestial realm, they need to fuse the regulations of the two realms together. In other words, they need to be both a saint and a demon master at the same time. Since that's the case, the realm that one enters should be the celestial realm, regardless of whether one is from the immortal realm or the netherworld. That was right. Regardless of whether one was an immortal realm elite or a netherworld elite, they would all end up in the celestial realm if they managed to fuse the regulations of the two realms. Celestial qi contains both the regulations of the immortal realm and the regulations of the netherworld. A thought flashed through Ling Han's mind, and it was as if he had discovered some important notion. However, he was unable to put his finger on its meaning no matter what. This made him feel extremely frustrated. What happened afterward? The prodigies all wanted to know what happened next. Thus, they advanced in the chariot, speeding toward the next illusion. Sure enough, after advancing for a while, they were dragged into the illusion again. Ding Xijin returned, only to discover that his wife and daughter had both been killed. He was naturally wild with rage, and a rain of blood started to pour from the sky. The entire galaxy became dim and lifeless, and even the sun was extinguished by the rain of blood. The entire galaxy had become a field of death. Is this the power possessed by those above the Genesis tier? He hadn't targeted anyone specifically, yet his anguished weeping had caused an entire galaxy to transform into a mass grave. Ding Xijin returned to his hometown and charged into his fiancée's clan, personally killing her before retrieving a treasure from her clan. He brought this treasure to his wife and daughter's grave. However, he was also hunted by the two clans. In order to repair their relationship with the other clan, the Ding clan even dispatched Ding Yaolong to participate in the hunt. After a ferocious and bloody battle, Ding Zizhen was severely wounded, suffering several unhealable Dao wounds. Although he managed to flee, his life was already coming to an end. He buried himself with his dead wife, where he would rest with her forever. Meanwhile, he used the precious treasure that he had retrieved from his fiancée's clan on his daughter. After heaven knew how many years, this treasure would reform his daughter's deceased spirit, allowing her to achieve reincarnation and thus rebirth. Phew! Everyone exhaled loudly. They had witnessed the final battle between Ding Yaolong and Ding Zizhen in the illusion, and it had been far too terrifying. A slight shock wave from their battle had been capable of obliterating numerous large planets and annihilating countless beings. Even saints don't possess such power, the North Emperor said with certainty. Although my master is only a small saint, I know that even saint kings will struggle to obliterate a planet. If they want to obliterate a planet, they'll have to unleash one of their more powerful attacks. However, those two managed to obliterate incredibly distant planets with just a slight shock wave from their battle. Saint kings definitely can't achieve this, the Stone Emperor said. Everyone nodded slowly. At this moment, they finally accepted that there was indeed another major tier above the Genesis tier. This tier was the Severing Mundane tier. However, from Ding Zizhen's memory, there was no shortage of Severing Mundane tier elites in his hometown. Just the Ding clan alone had 10 or so Severing Mundane tier elites. Meanwhile, his fiancée's clan also had a similar number of Severing Mundane tier elites. This was petrifying. To their knowledge, each galaxy only had a maximum of one saint. However, in Ding Zizhen's memory, just one clan alone could house 10 or so elites that were above the level of Genesis tier saints. What kind of place was that? It's the Celestial Realm. Ling Han answered in his mind. Ding Zizhen had come from the Celestial Realm, and that explained why there were so many elites in the Ding clan. Moreover, taking into account the pyramid structure of elites, Severing Mundane tier elites definitely weren't the most powerful beings in the Celestial Realm. Otherwise, there was no way a single clan could have 10 such elites. That would simply be heaven-defying. Since you people have come, it means that my daughter's spirit is almost about to reform, a voice suddenly said. This voice was uncannily familiar. It was Ding Zizhen. In the illusion, this was the identity that they had assumed. Thus, they were naturally extremely familiar with this voice. Help me complete the final step, and aid my daughter in her rebirth. As a token of gratitude, the person who helps me can learn the celestial technique, the Tide of the Ages. Ding Zizhen said. This wasn't a voice, but rather a thought that traveled directly into their minds. This was the dying will of Ding Zizhen, a will that had been left heaven knew how many billions of years ago. If his daughter wasn't saved, this will wouldn't disappear. The prodigies were all extremely excited at this moment. Celestial technique, Tide of the Ages. Wasn't this the secret technique that Ding Yaolong had once used? This was the secret technique of the Ding clan, and it could accelerate the flow of time by tens of thousands of times. It could age an attack, and it also age a being. This secret technique could be regarded as one of the most powerful defensive techniques. At the same time, it could also be regarded as one of the most powerful offensive techniques. During his youth, Ding Yaolong had used this secret technique to defeat an opponent who was 2 entire minor levels above him. At that time, he hadn't even reached the pinnacle level yet. However, he was still able to surpass 8 stars. That was simply incredible. Theoretically speaking, one's power could only surpass more than 6 stars after they reached the pinnacle level. Once they advanced to the next major tier, their power would fall back to 6 stars. However, this was a secret technique, not pure power. Thus, the two didn't clash. I have to obtain this. At this moment, they all eyed each other cautiously, hostility brewing in the air. Who didn't want to obtain this secret technique? Why don't we find the resting place of Senior Ding's daughter first, Ling Han suggested. Since Ding Zizhen was willing to offer such an astounding secret technique, reviving his daughter definitely wouldn't be easy. Thus, now was far too early to have an internal conflict. The people here were all king tiers apart from Zhou Quan and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Thus, their self-control was naturally outstanding as well. They nodded in agreement and forcefully suppressed their greedy urges. There was no hurry. The chariot continued forward, yet they didn't enter the illusion again. They had already experienced everything that Ding Zizhen had wanted them to experience. Moreover, they had also learned some other things. For example, why did the mountain river forest and Sun Moon Valley open 33,333 years and 44,444 years apart? This was because Ding Zizhen had been engaged with his wife for over 30,000 years before finally marrying her. Then, after another 44,000 or so years, his wife gave birth to their daughter. This was also a relic of his undying will. As for why there was celestial qi, that was because Ding Zizhen had come from the celestial realm. In fact, he was a celestial. He had guarded this place for billions of years, for no other reason but to revive his daughter. However, were the evil beasts in this place also related to Ding Zizhen? They probably were. This was the two-realm battlefield, where blood, deceased souls, and corpses would mingle. Add to that Ding Zizhen's severing mundane tier will, and it wasn't strange that this place had given birth to eternal river tier evil beasts. At the very least, the golden sand had probably been formed from Ding Zizhen's corpse. It was imbued with his celestial martial intent, so it was only natural that even a saint had been stunned upon seeing it. However, since they could experience the illusions, the four eternal river tier elites that had arrived before them had most likely experienced the same illusions as well. Hurry! There was a bright gleam in their eyes as they urged the Stone Emperor to make the chariot go faster. Rumble. The chariot sped forward. This chariot was almost invincible below the level of saints, and its advance was simply unstoppable. After around a day, the thick fog around them vanished, revealing a mountain before them. This mountain was a neat rectangular prism, and it was as if it had been forcefully carved out by someone. That's not a mountain. It's a coffin. Chapter 1327 Ancient Coffin. The thick fog dissipated, revealing a mountain-sized coffin. Ling Han and the others weren't surprised to see this. After all, the illusion had made it clear that Ding Zizhen had buried his daughter here. Moreover, their journey to this place was in order to revive Ding Ling. If a dead person weren't laid to rest in a coffin, where else would they be laid to rest? However, this coffin was far too large. It was thousands of meters tall and at least 9,000 meters long. If someone claimed that this was a mountain range, it would definitely be believable. On the other side of the coffin, there stood 4 people, each separated a certain distance from each other. They all exuded tremendously powerful auras, making it seem as if they were the center of the universe. They were none other than the 4 eternal river tier elites: the Wind Rider Divine King, Wide Travel Monk King, Pale-Faced Scholar, and Wolf-Headed Brute. Sure enough, they had arrived here before them. More importantly, they were also quite courageous. After all, not everyone would dare to enter the illusion so many times. What if they became stuck in the illusion and couldn't wake up? When one's divine sense left their body would slowly shrivel and eventually die. Now that we've arrived, it's a free-for-all. The prodigies all hopped off the Stone Emperor's chariot. Little Han, when you have spare time, come visit the Universal Tao Galaxy, the Stone Emperor said. Oh, that's right. In another 100 or so years, the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy in the Myriad Directions Galaxy is going to recruit new disciples. The prodigies from the hundreds of nearby galaxies will all gather to fight for the mere 100 spots. I hope to see you there. The North Emperor also wore a faint smile as he looked at Ling Han. He was extremely confident in Ling Han's abilities. Although one of them was the son of a saint and one of them was the disciple of a saint, their hopes of becoming a saint in the future were infinitesimally close to zero. Becoming an eternal river tier elite wouldn't be difficult, but becoming a saint would be close to impossible. The higher a senior's cultivation level, the harder it would be for them to raise a successor who was equally as powerful as them, to say nothing of raising a successor who was more powerful than them. As for Ling Han, however, there was a large chance that he could become a saint. Thus, even with their lofty status, the Stone Emperor and the North Emperor were still extremely amiable toward Ling Han. They didn't flaunt their cultivation as heavenly body tier elites, nor did they use their status as successors to saints to belittle Ling Han. They were making a conscious effort to treat Ling Han as somewhat of an equal. Star Sand Martial Arts Academy? Ling Han asked with a blank expression. The Star Sand Martial Arts Academy was opened by the Star Sand Saint. The Star Sand Saint is a great saint, and in its 10 billion year history, the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy has raised a whopping 8 saints, the North Emperor explained. Among the heavenly numbers, 9 is the extreme, the pinnacle. Thus, the Star Sand Saint has said that he'll only accept one more disciple. This is because it will be impossible for him to raise a 10th saint. So, every single prodigy is doing everything within their ability to enter the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy at this moment, the Stone Emperor continued. They want to become the 9th disciple of the Star Sand Saint so that they themselves can become a saint in the future. Yang Lin, the Cloud Maiden, and Yuing all heard this clearly. There was a look of eager anticipation on their faces. Great Saint. Although the Cloud Stone Saint and Plentiful Sea Saint were also saints, they were only small saints. They could indeed look down upon the world, yet compared to great saints, the gulf between their abilities was like the distance between heaven and earth. If it weren't for their reputation and face, perhaps even the Cloud Stone Saint and Plentiful Sea Saint would be willing to become disciples of the Star Sand Saint. If they became his disciples, perhaps they would have the chance to become medium saints. Otherwise, they would remain at the level of small saint forever. This was inevitable. After becoming saints, there was already no more cultivation technique for them to practice. Their martial arts techniques would have also reached a pinnacle. Thus, they would have to resolve any problem that they came across by themselves. There was no one for them to consult. As a result, their lifespan of 1 billion years would eventually be meandered away. If one could become the Star Sand Saint's disciple, their status would truly soar into the skies. Ling Han nodded slowly, and said, I understand. I'll definitely go to the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy within 100 years. Then we'll meet again at that time, the Stone Emperor said with a loud laugh. However, as for this opportunity before us, I won't give it up to you guys. He rode his chariot toward the top of the ancient coffin. His saint-level chariot obviously possessed the ability to fly. This chariot was the root of his confidence. In fact, he wouldn't be afraid even if the 4 Eternal River tier elites targeted him. Xiao! The chariot flew to top the coffin, and then disappeared. Ling Han and the others spread apart, starting to explore the secret of this coffin from different angles. Ding Zixian's deceased daughter definitely lay in this coffin. However, if they wanted to revive her, they obviously had to get her out of this coffin. Thus, the first problem was how they would open this coffin. Or, it could also be how they would get inside it. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden naturally stayed beside Ling Han. They circled the coffin, only to find that it was engraved with a dense layer of symbols. These symbols looked a little like formation patterns, yet they also looked a bit like the divine patterns formed by martial intent. After circling around the coffin, they didn't find any way to open it or any point of entry. Could it be on the top? Ling Han decided to climb to the top of the coffin. In this strange place, he didn't have the ability to reach a height of 3,000 meters with a single jump and thus reach the top of the coffin. However, as long as he had some footholds on the coffin, scaling to the top would be a simple task. Yet, when he jumped up and prepared to place a foot on the coffin, he felt an intense chill grip at his heart. It was as if he would be damned to eternal doom if he dared to place his foot on the coffin. He forcefully retracted his foot. Pung! He fell to the ground with a loud thump, blasting a crater into the earth. What's wrong? The heavenly phoenix divine maiden asked in confusion. Before Ling Han could even answer, a wretched wail suddenly traveled over from the distance. Like Ling Han, someone else had also thought about scaling up the side of the coffin. However, they were shattered into pieces of mangled flesh once they placed their hand onto the coffin. Blood sprayed through the air, forming crimson mist. Gasp. Although that person wasn't a supreme elite, they were still a Sun-Moon tier cultivator. Yet, they had died after just slight contact with the coffin? This coffin was extremely dangerous. At the same time, a deafening boom also traveled over from the sky. Everyone looked up, only to see a chariot descending from the sky. This was none other than the Stone Emperor. At this moment, however, the purple gold bull was actually missing a horn, and the chariot was also missing a plate on one side. Ling Han's expression involuntarily changed. That was saintly material, yet it had actually been damaged. The might of this ancient coffin was clear for all to see. Ding Zizhen was a celestial. Since this was the case, it became less astonishing that the coffin had managed to damage the saintly material. *T, my father is definitely going to beat me to death now, the Stone Emperor wailed in grief. This chariot obviously didn't belong to him, but rather was something he had secretly brought along in order to show off. In his mind, he was merely going to a galaxy where the overall cultivation level was still lagging behind. Thus, it would obviously be impossible for his chariot to become damaged. After all, there was no saint in this galaxy. However, as his luck would have it, this galaxy indeed didn't have a saint, yet it had a fucking celestial. This was an even more freakish being. Now, his chariot had become irreparably damaged. As a result, its power and might would definitely be affected. When he returned, he would definitely receive a brutal scolding from his father. Meanwhile, there was a lingering fear in Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's mind. If Ling Han hadn't retracted his foot in time just then, he would definitely be a cloud of blood in the air at this moment. After all, even saintly material had been damaged by this coffin. Ling Han frowned, and said to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, "Fly me up." The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden nodded before unfurling her wings. She then grabbed Ling Han and soared into the air. After arriving above the ancient coffin, the two of them examined it carefully. However, this ancient coffin looked like a solid body, and they couldn't find the gap between the coffin and lid at all. Even if they could find this gap, who would dare to reach over and raise the lid? Strange. There was no way to enter or open this coffin, so how could they help Ding Zizhen revive his daughter? Ling Han had initially thought that he would be able to see the entrance to the coffin from above. However, his sensitive divine sense told him with absolute certainty that there was definitely no entrance to this coffin. Otherwise, the Stone Emperor wouldn't have tried to force his way in either, resulting in the damage to his saint-level chariot. What could he do? Chapter 1328 Pinnacle Level of the Sun-Moon Tier. Although there was no gap or entrance to the ancient coffin, no one present was willing to leave. This opportunity was far too great. Not only was no one willing to leave, but more and more people were also arriving. However, the thick fog had already disappeared, and it seemed as if the illusions that showed the memories of Ding Zizhen were only shown to the few people who had arrived first. In any case, the story of Ding Zizhen had already started to make its way around. Even though the new arrivals were suspicious of this story, they still decided to stay for a little longer upon seeing that the four Eternal River tier elites had no plans to leave. Anyhow, the lifespan of immortals was extremely long, so wasting 10 or 20 years here wouldn't be a loss. As such, more and more people crowded around the coffin. In the beginning, there were only several hundred people. However, this quickly became a few thousand, then tens of thousands, and then hundreds of thousands. It probably wouldn't be long before the crowd reached 1 million. Eternal River tier elites also started to arrive. Not only did the Purple Moon Divine Maiden come, but the Eternal River tier elites of the two imperial empires also arrived. For example, Great General Xie had also come, along with several other elites Ling Han couldn't name. At any rate, these were all elites who were extremely renowned on the Cloud Apex planet. Even the Crimson Flame Emperor and Blue Cloud Emperor, the two most powerful elites, were astonished by the events in this place. They had both reached the consummate level of the Eternal River tier, and were currently cultivating toward the Genesis tier. Right now, they couldn't come to this place by themselves, so they both dispatched elites from their Imperial clan. The elite from the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire was Gu Su. He was the fourth-generation grandson of the Crimson Flame Emperor, and he had already reached the high extreme of the Eternal River tier. His strength was top-notch, and he was dispatched here as the representative for the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire. He was both powerful and of a high status, so it was only natural that he had been chosen as their representative. As for the Blue Cloud Imperial Empire, they had sent the ninth son of the Blue Cloud Emperor. He was also the most talented son of the Blue Cloud Emperor, and he was destined to succeed the throne in the future. He was also at the high extreme of the Eternal River tier. Ling Han wasn't sure whom the Netherworld had sent, though he was certain that they had also sent incredibly powerful elites. In fact, it was only because this place had only been discovered a short time ago that only the elites from the Cloud Apex planet had arrived. After a few more years, many more elites would arrive from the Long Light Galaxy. After a dozen or so years, perhaps even elites from neighboring galaxies would arrive after hearing of the news. In fact, even saints might appear. However, since there was no way to deal with the ancient Coffin at this moment, Ling Han decided to enter the Black Tower to cultivate in seclusion. He would comprehend the secrets of the Pinnacle level under the reincarnation tree. After perfecting her comprehension of the regulations of the two realms, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden also obtained a chance to break through to the Pinnacle level. Thus, she also decided to undergo comprehension under the reincarnation tree. There, she and Ling Han could also receive some tips from the Notionless Saint. According to the Notionless Saint, one would have to reach the Pinnacle level in at least one major tier if they wanted to advance to the Genesis tier. Although this seemed like a fairly low bar, it was actually incredibly difficult to reach a Pinnacle level in any major tier. Moreover, reaching the Pinnacle level of a major tier was only a necessary prerequisite to advancing to the Genesis tier. It didn't guarantee that one would break through to the Genesis tier. The Notionless Saint wasn't weak, and he had reached the Pinnacle level in both the Sun-Moon tier and the Heavenly Body tier. Thus, he could provide Ling Han and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden with a lot of inspiration. In reality, there was nothing for him to do right now anyway, so he might as well give them some tips to pass time. Time slowly crept by. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had already passed. In the meantime, Ling Han hadn't wasted the chance to temper his body in the immortal flames. Although he couldn't ingest berserk blood spirit pills anymore, he still needed to practice the secret technique, rising from the ashes. This made him feel mounting pressure. He definitely had to break through to the Pinnacle level as soon as possible. Otherwise, he would be wasting valuable time. Once he broke through, he would be able to soar to the peak stage of the Pinnacle level within 1 year. At that time, the door to the Heavenly Body tier would finally open to him. Once he advanced to the Heavenly Body tier, he would then be able to unlock the 5th level of the Black Tower and complete the 5 elements. By achieving this, he would be able to cultivate the indestructible Heaven Scroll to a more perfect level. However, neither Ling Han nor the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden saw any hope of breaking through. Even with the guidance of a saint, they were still unable to smash through the barrier to the Pinnacle level after 60 years of cultivation. They weren't worried about this, however, as they had the help of the reincarnation tree. This meant that they had 400 times the cultivation time of other cultivators. This was an astounding advantage. Another 3 months passed, and Ling Han finally seized a shred of enlightenment. This enlightenment allowed him to instantly break through. He exited the Black Tower. Dark clouds instantly formed above him, and even this place was unable to obstruct the tribulation of heaven and earth. Ling Han actively shattered his godly bones as he faced heavenly tribulation. Meanwhile, the divine demon sword also faced heavenly tribulation alongside him. In a strange sight, the divine demon sword discharged countless shards of broken metal, significantly shrinking in size. It went from its original length of 3 feet long to just 3 inches long. However, its quality had elevated to level 8. It couldn't consume other godly metal, so it refined its own body. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh in emotion. As expected of divine metal, it had an innate desire to transform toward perfection. After he had broken through, it was as if the pride of this sword had also pushed it to level up, unwilling to stay at the same level. However, the divine demon sword had shrunk tenfold, so wouldn't it become as small and thin as a needle the next time it refined itself? I've got to work hard to find more level 8 godly metal. I've got to return the divine demon sword to its original size. No one ran over to check out the commotion. Right now, everyone's attention was on the ancient coffin. So what if someone was undergoing heavenly tribulation? Half a day later, Ling Han circulated a drop of indestructible true fluid and reformed his godly bones. He then entered the Black Tower and ingested a berserk blood spirit pill under the reincarnation tree. He would continue to cultivate and elevate his cultivation level. 3 days later, he advanced to the middle stage of the pinnacle level. This feels amazing. The situation around the ancient coffin was still the same as before. More and more people arrived, yet there was still no way to open or enter the coffin. Moreover, many great elites had teamed up to investigate the ancient coffin, discovering that the symbols on the ancient coffin were extremely valuable. In fact, these symbols even weakened the bottlenecks that had held them back for many years. After discovering this, the cultivators at this place naturally wouldn't leave anymore. This place became a holy land that attracted more and more cultivators. The ancient coffin was one of the attractions of this place. The other attraction was the dirt that contained golden sand. It was incredibly valuable, and even saints could receive inspiration from this golden sand. In fact, this golden sand could help saints advance to a higher level. Thus, this place became bustling with activity, with some people comprehending Tao and some people refining dirt. Ling Han even saw Xie Donglai among the crowds. He caused such a huge disaster, yet he was actually released. The reason for this was simple. This place had an ancient coffin with profound symbols, as well as golden sand that could attract even Genesis tier saints. So, as an extremely important descendant of the Xie clan, how could Xie Donglai forego this opportunity? Perhaps he might receive sudden enlightenment in this place and advance to the heavenly body tier? At that time, he would become a pillar of the Xie clan. Ling Han wanted to kill him, yet Xie Donglai comprehended Tao beside the ancient coffin all day long. Moreover, he was also accompanied by Great General Xie, an eternal river tier elite, so how could Ling Han have the opportunity to kill him? I refuse to believe that you'll stay beside the coffin forever. Ling Han was becoming a little impatient. Everything would be fine if Xie Donglai only broke through to the pinnacle level. After all, he had already advanced to the middle stage of the low extreme of the pinnacle level. With his current battle prowess, he would be able to suppress Xie Donglai with a wave of his hand. However, what if Xie Donglai broke through to the heavenly body tier? In any case, Xie Donglai was also a prodigy. Thus, he would still possess a battle prowess of at least 3 stars if he advanced to the heavenly body tier. That being the case, there was no guarantee that Ling Han could suppress him, even if he were at the peak stage of the pinnacle level. With Xie Donglai's talent, it's more likely that he'll advance to the heavenly body tier if he really does break through, Ling Han speculated. I must advance to the peak stage of the pinnacle level. If Xie Donglai breaks through, he'll definitely have to face heavenly tribulation. I'll seize that opportunity to kill him. Chapter 1329 Tide of the Ages. For the Sun-Moon tier, Ling Han genuinely didn't need to cultivate to accumulate origin power. The Berserk Blood Spirit Pill could flawlessly elevate his cultivation level. Moreover, while others could only ingest one Berserk Blood Spirit Pill every few years, he could ingest one every 3 months. Thus, Ling Han's days simply comprised of refining pills, refining golden sand, and comprehending the symbols on the ancient coffin. He lugged a huge amount of dirt into the Black Tower. He was more powerful in the Black Tower, so he could refine the golden sand with much more ease. Huh! Small Tower suddenly appeared and exclaimed in surprise, saying, "This contains celestial-level martial intent." A celestial might have died here, and his blood and flesh might have affected this piece of land, Ling Han replied with a nod. Small Tower swayed slightly, not replying immediately. It was as if it were carefully examining the golden sand. After a while, it said, "If you can obtain a large amount of this sand, I can extract a celestial technique from within them." Ling Han's heart quivered, and he asked, "What celestial technique?" "It's got to do with time." "As for the specifics, I'll only know after I extract the technique," Small Tower replied. Gasp! Isn't this the Ding clan's untaught secret technique, Tide of the Ages? Ling Han couldn't help but feel invigorated with excitement. This was the bloodline's secret technique of the Ding clan, which members of the Ding clan would naturally grasp if their bloodline was powerful enough or after their cultivation reached a certain level. Perhaps it was because of this reason that this secret technique was etched into the body of Ding Zijian. Even though his soul had already vanished, this secret technique was still etched in his blood, which had become one with this expanse of land. As such, this secret technique was also etched in this land. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to do anything even if they knew this fact. Take, for example, the notionless saint, who could only receive some inspiration from this golden sand. Perhaps he could advance from a small saint to a medium saint or great saint. However, there was definitely no way that he could extract a secret technique from it. Only the Black Tower could do this, as it was a supreme precious treasure even in the celestial realm. Ling Han was instantly filled with motivation. While most people spent their time comprehending the symbols on the ancient coffin, he spent his time collecting as much dirt as he could. Meanwhile, speck after speck of golden sand appeared in the Black Tower, eventually building up to become a small mountain. "Is that enough?" he asked. "No," Small Tower replied. "Is there enough now?" "No." Just like this, Ling Han continued to collect and refine dirt. After 3 entire months, Small Tower finally nodded hesitantly, saying that it could give it a try. After all, these specks of golden sand had only been dyed with a little celestial blood. Moreover, countless years had already passed since Ding Zijian's death. Thus, the martial intent that was contained within the specks of golden sand was already starting to vanish. If it weren't for the fact that this celestial technique was coincidentally related to time, perhaps this martial intent wouldn't have even survived until now. Ling Han went to temper his body in the immortal flames. Meanwhile, Small Tower extracted a secret technique from the specks of golden sand, the Tide of the Ages. 3 days passed, and Ling Han had transformed into a 10-year-old youth. He was already close to grasping the initial concepts of rising from the ashes. Now, it was naturally time for him to ingest another berserk blood spirit pill so that he could elevate his cultivation by another level. Late stage of the Pinnacle level. "Take it," Small Tower said. A speck of light flew toward Ling Han, radiating with a glow that was even brighter than the sun. However, this glow wasn't painfully blinding in its brightness. "You've extracted it?" Ling Han asked. "There was too little martial intent, so I was only able to extract a portion of the secret technique. If you can't comprehend it from this, you'll have to bring me another small mountain of golden sand," Small Tower answered. "That would be another 3 months of hard work." Ling Han nodded in understanding. He wanted to grasp this secret technique in one attempt. Taking with him the speck of light, Ling Han arrived beneath the reincarnation tree. He then placed the speck of light onto his forehead and started to comprehend its profoundness. Wang! A loud rumble instantly echoed through his mind. It was as if a tsunami had formed, yearning to blast through his forehead. Meanwhile, the speck of light evolved in his mind, growing to an indescribably large size. Ling Han studied it carefully, observing countless swirls within the orb of light. As these swirls spun, Ling Han felt as if he were observing the life cycle of numerous planets, from birth to death. Billions of years passed in the blink of an eye. This was the evolution of time, the revealing of heaven and earth's secret. Ling Han reached out and tried to touch these swirls. The orb of light instantly disintegrated and spread throughout his mind. It then started to dim and disappear. It vanished without a trace. He couldn't examine it any further. Ling Han hurriedly started to comprehend what he had just experienced. Under the reincarnation tree, he had almost 400 times the amount of time of other people. He refused to believe that he couldn't grasp this secret technique with 400 times more time. He would be satisfied as long as he could swallow all the information and comprehend the general outline of the secret technique. He could slowly digest it and comprehend the finer details later. Time slowly crept by. After a month or so, Ling Han suddenly opened his eyes. "Age," he said softly. He teleported to a corner of the Black Tower and tapped his finger on a large tree. The leaves of this large tree instantly became yellow and fell. In just 30 minutes, the large tree had completely withered to death. "I guess I've got a basic grasp of this secret technique. With a tap of my finger, I can cause a person to lose thousands of years of their lifespan in 30 minutes. However, this is purely aging a being, and not maturing them. Otherwise, the tree should have blossomed and borne fruits. However, this didn't happen, and the tree simply aged until it died. Although I can wield the power of time, my control over it is far too weak right now. Even if I want to age a cultivator at the low extreme of the mountain river tier to death, it will take me an entire day of work. With my current cultivation level, there's no way I can unleash this secret technique for so long. What a shame. It would great if I could pause time like Qi Huangji." Ling Han couldn't help but sigh in emotion. Although they were both secret techniques related to time, aging and pausing time were completely different concepts. If he could pause time, even for just a short moment, it would give him incredible advantages during battle. On the other hand, if he wanted to unleash the full power of Tide of the Ages, he would need to obtain the ability to age time by at least billions of years with a snap of his fingers. Otherwise, if he merely severed the lifespan of Eternal River tier elites or Genesis tier saints by a few hundred or a few thousand years, it would be like giving them a harmless tickle. Hang on. Can the aging of time be viewed as a curse? To those under the immortal level, even shattering void tier cultivators only have a lifespan of 1,000 years. If they're affected by Tide of the Ages, decreasing their lifespan by 100 years would already be a very good result. If they're affected by Tide of the Ages 10 times, they'll be as good as dead. Ling Han's imagination ran wild, and he thought of many, many possibilities. "Ling Han," the heavenly phoenix divine maiden suddenly called. "I'm about to break through." Ling Han faltered for a moment before hurriedly taking her out of the Black Tower. Rumble. Dark clouds gathered in the sky as heavenly tribulation prepared to descend. "We'll face it together," he said with a smile. This was a good chance for him to improve the power of heaven's might. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was touched yet anxious. "Don't do it," she said. "The power of heavenly tribulation is far too terrifying. However, I'm confident that I can overcome it by myself. There's no need for you to help me." She was afraid that Ling Han would be wounded. Hee hee. Ling Han couldn't help but feel secretly happy upon hearing this. He didn't reveal that he was unafraid of heavenly tribulation, nor did he reveal that he was simply joining her heavenly tribulation to comprehend his own Tao. Instead, he pulled the heavenly phoenix divine maiden into an embrace, giving her a passionate kiss. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden's eyes instantly widened in surprise. She felt that Ling Han's behavior was far too absurd. It was such a tense moment, yet he was still in the mood to do this kind of thing. Crackle. A bolt of lightning crashed down. It was as if even heaven couldn't watch on, and it wanted to pulverize Ling Han to death. Ling Han raised his hand toward the sky. The divine lightning crashed into him, yet it was unable to even singe his skin. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden instantly became wide-eyed with shock. Chapter 1330 The chance has come. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden knew that Ling Han possessed a freakish physique, yet she definitely hadn't envisioned that it was actually this freakish. Don't make trouble, can't you see that I'm busy? Ling Han said to the sky, a smile on his face. He then lowered his head and kissed the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, whose dainty mouth was still agape with astonishment. Kwang! 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 Heaven was furious that someone dared to interfere in someone else's heavenly tribulation. This was a challenge to heaven and earth. The devastating arcs of divine lightning instantly formed a dense net that crashed down on Ling Han. Only at this moment did Ling Han let go of the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. She would still need to face her own heavenly tribulation, as this was integral if one wanted to stabilize their cultivation's foundations. However, he still stood guard beside her so that he could help her dissolve any fatal dangers. This would be an impossible task for anyone else. Even saints couldn't achieve this. When one was faced with heavenly tribulation that corresponded to their cultivation level, they would face the danger of death, regardless of how talented they were. However, Ling Han was an exception. His physique was unbelievably powerful, meaning that he was fully capable of interfering in others' heavenly tribulations. The worst thing that could happen was that he would also have to face his own heavenly tribulation. As long as he didn't interfere in a heavenly tribulation of heavenly body tier elites or eternal river tier elites, he was completely capable of overcoming tribulations for anyone else. Perhaps I can make a business out of this. Maybe I'll charge some godly metal every time I dissolve a tribulation for a low-level immortal. Ling Han was truly poor, so much so that such a thought actually flashed through his mind. Forget about it. That'll be far too eye-catching. Being noticed by too many people isn't a good thing. Ling Han quickly shook his head, shooting this idea down. He decided to earn money through alchemy instead. Dissolving heavenly tribulation for others would attract far too much attention. More importantly, he might draw the ire of heaven if he helped too many people dissolve their tribulation. What if heaven suddenly unleashed an eternal river tier or Genesis tier heavenly tribulation to dispose of him? Ling Han and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden moved a suitable distance apart so that they could each face their own tribulation. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was facing an ordinary pinnacle level heavenly tribulation. Meanwhile, Ling Han had not only intruded on her heavenly tribulation, but he had even helped the heavenly phoenix divine maiden block a strike. Thus, the heavenly tribulation that he faced was a whopping 10 times more powerful. However, it was only 10 times. Ling Han was completely unafraid. Right now, his physique was already as tough as level 9 godly metal, perhaps even a tiny bit stronger. Thus, there was absolutely no need for him to fear this kind of heavenly tribulation. However, this also revealed another piece of information: being swept into someone else's tribulation wasn't scary, but interfering in it was. If one dared to interfere in someone else's heavenly tribulation, they would face a tribulation that was several times more powerful. However, Ling Han wasn't sure whether it would necessarily be 10 times more powerful. Perhaps it would become more powerful the more times he interfered. In any case, he decided not to make a business out of this. It's probably best to show some respect to heaven and earth, Ling Han said in his mind. He didn't shatter his godly bones this time, so he was naturally relaxed and at ease as he faced heavenly tribulation. He observed the workings of the tribulation and transformed these observations into his own comprehension. The lightning divine pattern on his right hand became increasingly complicated, resonating with the rhythm of the great Tao. Half a day passed, and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden successfully overcame her tribulation, becoming a genuine pinnacle level king tier. If one didn't advance to the pinnacle level, they couldn't be regarded as a king tier, even if they had reached the pinnacle level in a previous tier. They would fall off the platform of king tiers and become someone who was slightly more powerful than ordinary prodigies. This was the reality of cultivation. If one didn't advance, they would quickly be surpassed. Right now, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was giddy with joy. Not in her wildest dreams had she imagined that she would one day reach the pinnacle level. Although she hadn't reached the pinnacle level of the mountain river tier, meaning that she would only be able to surpass 9 stars at most, not 10 stars, she was still beside herself with delight. Ling Han leaned toward her as he said, "Congratulations, wife. Come, give me a kiss." The heavenly phoenix divine maiden wasn't Shui Yenyu, and she immediately began to resist. However, how could she suppress Ling Han? It wasn't long before she was held down and passionately kissed by Ling Han. "Little rascal, you're bullying me," the heavenly phoenix divine maiden chided softly. There was a watery glimmer in her beautiful eyes, making her appear especially beautiful and charming. Ling Han almost howled like a lustful wolf. Even his eyes had become red with excitement. However, it was a shame that his body was only 10 years old, meaning that he had absolutely no ability to do anything more. He was so devastated that he hammered the ground with his fists, his expression as if he wanted to murder someone. "What's wrong?" the heavenly phoenix divine maiden asked in concern. "It's nothing, I just want some peace and quiet." In a month, Ling Han could temper his body in the immortal flames again. After that, he could ingest a berserk blood spirit pill for one last time. His cultivation would reach the peak stage of the pinnacle level, and at that time, all he would need to do was comprehend Tao in seclusion. Once he comprehended the profound mystery of heavenly bodies, he would have obtained the ability to advance to the next major tier. Meanwhile, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden immediately ingested a berserk blood spirit pill and raised her cultivation to the next level. In just 3 short days, she advanced 1 sub-minor level. This made her sigh with emotion. This was the benefit of following an alchemist. The rapid speed of her cultivation would definitely attract jealousy. Ling Han still had a vial of the rock spirit's spiritual liquid on him. However, this spiritual liquid was a heavenly body tier treasure, so it would be a huge waste if he drank it now. Moreover, it would clash with the effects of the berserk blood spirit pill. As such, it was probably best to leave it until he reached the heavenly body tier. The two of them returned to the area surrounding the ancient coffin. This was truly a strange situation. Ding Zizhen had said that he wanted someone to rescue his daughter, yet he didn't even allow them to see his daughter, so how on earth were they supposed to rescue her? Anyhow, Ling Han had already learned Tide of the Ages, so he naturally wasn't interested in Ding Zizhen's reward anymore. The only reason he remained here was for the golden sand. It was an incredibly valuable item, and he could sell it for good money. In addition, the symbols on the ancient coffin were also genuinely useful. Observing them could elevate his comprehension of the great Tao. "Ha ha ha, I'm going to break through," someone exclaimed. This wasn't a surprising situation. The ancient coffin could aid one's comprehension, so during the past 6 months, many people had already overcome barriers that had held them down for a long time, and advanced to a new cultivation level. In fact, they could sense the commotion of someone facing heavenly tribulation every few days. However, the higher one's cultivation, the harder it would be to overcome the barriers between each cultivation level. This was evident from the fact that no eternal river tier elite had broken through. Perhaps they would need to cultivate here for a dozen years or several thousand years before they could break through. To elites like them, breaking through within 1 million years would already be a delightful surprise. The excited exclamation of this person instantly attracted the envious gazes of many people. Ling Han glanced over, and a cold glint instantly flashed through his eyes. That was Xie Donglai. He was on the verge of breaking through to the heavenly body tier. The sparks of starry light that subtly flashed around his body were the clearest evidence of this. Moreover, he would also be the first person to break through to the heavenly body tier in these past 6 months. The reason for this was simple. First of all, he was indeed a prodigy of the younger generation. Second of all, he had already been stuck at this bottleneck for an extremely long time. Thus, with the help of the ancient coffin, he was finally able to overcome this bottleneck and soar toward the next major tier. Ha 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 ha. Xie Donglai was smug with joy as he speedily ran away. As arrogant as he was, he still didn't dare to face heavenly tribulation here and risk affecting the others. Even if there weren't eternal river tier elites here, he still wouldn't dare to anger everyone. After all, a punch from each person would be more than enough to kill him. As he sped away, he saw Ling Han out of the corner of his eyes. Killing intent involuntarily flashed across his eyes. Once he broke through, Ling Han would be the first person that he killed. After that, he would kill Faceless. The former had stolen his woman, and the latter had dared to humiliate him. They both deserved to die. His speed was incredible as he raced further and further from the coffin. No one from the Xie clan followed behind him. The only danger in facing heavenly tribulation came from the tribulation itself. After all, who dared to charge into someone else's heavenly tribulation? Even if someone did dare to do this, they would simply be swept into the tribulation themselves. That being the case, would they still have the ability to make trouble? Thus, heavenly tribulation was both the most dangerous and the safest event at the same time. Ling Han suddenly stood up. His chance had come. Chapter 1331 Heavenly Tribulation of Xie Donglai. Xie Donglai's body became a blur as he raced into the distance. He was brimming with excitement at this moment, and he couldn't help but whoop in joy. In his eyes, the entire world was shining with a bright and radiant glow. He was a genius. He had advanced to the Mountain River tier in 100 or so years, and then to the Sun Moon tier in 1,000 or so years. However, he had been stuck at the peak stage of the Sun Moon tier since 300 years ago, unable to advance any further. Although the peak stage of the Sun Moon tier was only a hair away from the Heavenly Body tier, this hair-thin barrier had prevented heaven knew how many people from advancing. In fact, it could be said that the gulf between the two cultivation levels was like heaven and earth. Right now, however, he was finally going to advance to the Heavenly Body tier. He would soar into the sky with a single step. From this moment on, he wouldn't be a mere cultivator anymore. Instead, he would be a legitimate elite. Upon thinking of his brilliant might as a Heavenly Body tier elite, and upon thinking of how he would casually crush his enemies under his feet, he couldn't help but want to laugh out loud. His smile was so wide that it almost reached his ears. Faceless, Ling Han, just you wait, he said in his mind. He accelerated forward, yearning to face and overcome his heavenly tribulation as soon as possible. He couldn't wait to become a Heavenly Body tier elite. In fact, he was so excited that he didn't even realize that he was being tailed by someone. Ling Han had activated the star-plucking step. After fusing the power of lightning into it, his speed was astonishingly quick. Not to mention that Xie Donglai still hadn't reached the Heavenly Body tier yet. Even if he had, his speed still wouldn't necessarily be quicker than Ling Han's. After all, Ling Han's power was almost bordering on the Heavenly Body tier right now. After an hour or so, Xie Donglai finally came to a stop and started to face his heavenly tribulation. In just half a day, he would advance to become a Heavenly Body tier elite. He stopped suppressing his cultivation. Dark clouds instantly gathered above him, heavenly tribulation descending at the same time. Meanwhile, his aura continued to rise, instantly reaching the peak stage of the Sun Moon tier. It eventually reached a level between the Sun Moon tier and the Heavenly Body tier. The longer he withstood the heavenly tribulation, the more his power would rise. This would continue until he truly reached the Heavenly Body tier. Correspondingly, the might of heavenly tribulation would also increase with time. It wouldn't reach the apex of its power right away. Quang! The first bolt of lightning crashed down. Xie Donglai roared and unsheathed a divine sword, slashing it toward the bolt of lightning. Ling Han suddenly revealed himself and charged toward Xie Donglai. Xie Donglai, it's time for you to pay your old debts, he roared. With the cover of heavenly tribulation, even Eternal River tier elites wouldn't dare to extend their divine sense over. Otherwise, they might be accidentally swept into heavenly tribulation themselves. In any case, not everyone was capable of forcing their divine sense through heavenly tribulation. Even saints weren't capable of doing this. Killing someone while they faced heavenly tribulation would truly be perfected would leave no trace of evidence at all. One wouldn't be able to reconstruct the events, even if they possessed secret techniques of time. Ling Han. Xie Donglai was both furious and delighted. He loathed Ling Han, yet he hadn't expected that Ling Han would actually dare to charge into his heavenly tribulation. Wasn't he seeking death? He laughed heartily, and said, I haven't gone looking for you yet you've already charged here to your own death. Xie Donglai, we've battled many times already. Since when have you ever enjoyed the upper hand? Ling Han asked faintly. He was brimming with confidence. This. Xie Donglai couldn't help but falter. He was rendered speechless. In the past, his cultivation level had been far above that of Ling Han. However, he couldn't translate this into an advantage no matter what. In the end, he could only run back to the Xie clan with his tail between his legs. He had almost been neglected, to the point where he would become an also-ran forever. However, that was all because of Ling Han's luck. If he weren't receiving help from the Purple Moon Divine Maiden, then he was receiving help from Faceless or someone else. This had rendered his crushing advantage in power completely useless. This time, however, he definitely wouldn't allow history to repeat itself. Ling Han, I'm on the verge of advancing to the heavenly body tier. Before me, you're nothing but a mere ant. He roared with laughter as he charged toward Ling Han. If he swept Ling Han into his heavenly tribulation, the brat would be severely wounded even if he weren't killed. However, he didn't expect this to kill Ling Han with his heavenly tribulation. In any case, he didn't hope to kill Ling Han with his heavenly tribulation either. That would be far too unsatisfying. Only by killing Ling Han with his own two hands would he be able to vent the anger pent up in his mind. He simply wanted to torture Ling Han by sweeping him into his heavenly tribulation. This would be a good way to collect some interest. Ling Han was naturally unafraid, and he continued to charge at Xie Donglai. Pung! The two of them exchanged a blow. By doing so, Ling Han had also interfered with Xie Donglai's heavenly tribulation. Heaven and earth instantly noticed this, and another tribulation cloud formed above Ling Han. Xie Donglai was sent flying, a look of pure shock and disbelief on his face. He couldn't believe that the power of his strike was weaker than Ling Han's. How can this be? Although he hadn't genuinely reached the heavenly body tier yet, he should have still possessed the power to crush cultivators at the peak stage of the Sun-Moon tier. So, how was his power inferior? Unless... A possibility suddenly sprang into his mind. Fury and envy instantly clawed at his heart. Pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier. You actually reached the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier. He was so jealous that he was almost about to go mad. He had spent 1,000 years trying to reach the doorstep of the pinnacle level, yet he hadn't been able to sense it at all. Afterward, it was the comprehensive loss to Faceless that had steeled his determination to break through to the heavenly body tier as soon as possible. He was yearning to exact revenge. However, who would have thought that Ling Han would easily reach the cultivation level that he could only dream of? Only a few years had passed. So what if you've reached the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier? Once I reach the heavenly body tier, killing you will be as easy as killing an ant. Xie Donglai was seething with anger. However, what he said was also true. He was a 4-star genius, so even if he advanced to become a heavenly body tier elite, his battle prowess would still be able to surpass 3 stars, right? What would it matter even if Ling Han were at the peak stage of the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier? There would still be a huge gulf between them. Then I won't allow you to reach the heavenly body tier. Ling Han said. He roared as he unsheathed the divine demon sword. He would kill Xie Donglai as quickly as he could lest he caused any more trouble. Ling Han, you've opposed me time and time again, Xie Donglai shouted. This time, however, you're simply seeking death. As he faced heavenly tribulation, he also launched an attack at Ling Han. The remnant might of his heavenly body tier heavenly tribulation swept toward Ling Han, just a shred of it probably powerful enough to trouble him. However, He clearly didn't know that heavenly tribulation was merely nourishment in the eyes of Ling Han. It was something that would aid his comprehension. If Ling Han were truly struck by a heavenly body tier heavenly tribulation, perhaps his godly bones would remain unscathed. However, his skin and flesh would definitely be blasted into smithereens. If it were only a remnant shock wave of heavenly tribulation, however, that would be extremely easy to deal with. Quang. Ferocious divine lightning struck Ling Han and Xie Donglai at the same time. One was a heavenly body tier heavenly tribulation, while one was a sun-moon tier heavenly tribulation. The divine lightning definitely wouldn't strike the wrong person. Ah! Xie Donglai shrieked in agony, blood spurting from his body. To any prodigy, heavenly tribulation would be immensely terrifying. They would need to use every iota of their strength to oppose it. Yet, what about right now? Xie Donglai had suffered an attack from both his heavenly tribulation and Ling Han. Moreover, Ling Han was at the pinnacle level of the sun-moon tier, and his astonishing battle prowess was almost no weaker than heavenly tribulation. How could he withstand this? If this were all, then so be it. After all, Ling Han was also facing heavenly tribulation and his attack at the same time. However, the problem was Ling Han was completely unaffected. He wanted to explode in rage, yet at the same time, he also felt shocked to the extreme. Ling Han's physique was far too freakish. It was already beyond the realm of his comprehension. Fuck, he cursed. Fuck yourself. Ling Han shouted. He wielded his divine demon sword, releasing a profound might and killing intent. Chapter 1332 Painting. Xie Donglai was a prodigy, after all, so he immediately changed his tactic after discovering the freakish toughness of Ling Han's physique. He would defend with his full power. As time passed, he would continue to become stronger. After a while, he would eventually advance to become a heavenly body tier elite. Coupled with his cultivation talent, he would possess battle prowess that was at least on par with the late stage of the low extreme. This would definitely be enough to suppress any sun-moon tier cultivator including those at the pinnacle level. Moreover, he could reach this level in just half a day. He stopped attacking and focused all of his power on defense. However, after just a few exchanges, he discovered that Ling Han was just as hard to deal with as his heavenly tribulation. How is he so powerful? He clearly hasn't reached the peak stage of the pinnacle level yet, so he shouldn't possess battle prowess on par with the heavenly body tier. So, why does he seem like a heavenly body tier elite? Ling Han's overwhelming power was beyond his imagination. Xie Donglai naturally wouldn't know that Ling Han had already been blessed by celestial qi twice. This had perfected his comprehension of the regulations and allowed him to raise his battle prowess by at least 1 star. Even though he hadn't reached the heavenly body tier yet, his battle prowess was already on the verge of the heavenly body tier. Fucking peasant. Xie Donglai spat through clenched teeth. Not only had Ling Han stolen the woman he liked, but this lowly peasant had even surpassed him in terms of cultivation and battle prowess. He was unable to accept this. He gritted his teeth and waved his hand, retrieving a scroll. The scroll swayed in the wind as he unfurled it, and there was a painting of 12 golden warriors on its 3-meter-long body. Each of the warriors was suited in golden armor and holding a spear. This was clearly a painting, yet it exuded an overwhelming murderous aura. It was as if this wasn't a painting of 12 warriors, but instead of 12 demons who had massacred millions of people to forge the bloody spears in their hands. Blood servants, are you not going to show yourself? Xie Donglai cried sharply. Read more chapter on novel full. Wang, wang, wang. The painting lit up, and the 12 golden warriors surprisingly walked out of the painting. They stood in the air and pointed their spears toward the sky. At the same time, the murderous aura exuded from them instantly soared 10-fold or perhaps even 100-fold. Ling Han frowned slightly. These 12 golden warriors were all at the heavenly body tier. Although they were only at the early stage of the low extreme, they had a big advantage in numbers. Together, they were powerful enough to oppose a being at the middle stage of the low extreme. More importantly, their killing intent was far too terrifying. If one possessed slightly weaker willpower, perhaps their knees would already be buckling at this moment. Damn it. You actually forced me to unleash this technique. Xie Donglai gritted his teeth in anger, and continued, however, since I've unleashed the blood servants, I'll be able to overcome my heavenly tribulation even if they can't kill you. When I succeed, it'll be time to deal with you. He had received this treasure from his senior after suffering greatly and returning to the Xie clan. This painting could only be activated once, yet it would summon 12 blood servants whose battle prowess was at the heavenly body tier. If this couldn't hold Ling Han at bay for half a day. He refused to believe that it couldn't. In his eyes, this was a test from his senior. If he was forced to use this painting, he would have naturally failed the test. However, he was about to reach the heavenly body tier anyway, so it wouldn't matter even if he didn't receive praise from this senior. His status in the Xie clan would still soar to a great height regardless. This painting was refined by a senior of my clan. He's at the consummate level of the heavenly body tier, and he extracted and sealed the divine sense of 12 elites from the Blue Cloud Imperial Empire in order to make this painting. Each of the blood servants had committed boundless crimes, and they were then refined by the bloody aura of battlegrounds, increasing their murderous aura. Xie Donglai wore a haughty expression, and he asked, "My blood servants. How will you block them?" Quang. A bolt of lightning crashed into his head. Although he managed to dissipate much of its might, it still left him especially disheveled. His hair was a mess, and he appeared to be in a very sorry state. His air of haughtiness instantly vanished into nothingness. Extracting and refining their divine sense? How ruthless. Although Ling Han had killed many people as well, death would mark the end of their hostility. However, the Xie clan actually refined the divine sense of their enemies into a treasure? In Ling Han's eyes, this was taking things too far. Anyhow, these golden warriors were beings formed from divine senses? Ling Han laughed loudly as he unleashed heaven's might. Wang. Not only was Xie Donglai's cultivation instantly weakened by 2 stars, but expressions of fear also appeared on the faces of the 12 murderous blood servants. They weren't afraid of Ling Han, but of the heaven's might that he had unleashed. Divine senses that had no host body shouldn't have existed in the world. They would be targeted by heavenly tribulation and attacked until they dissolved. Thus, the 12 blood servants were petrified once they sensed the heaven's might unleashed by Ling Han, even though this wasn't genuine heaven's might. Fuck. Xie Donglai mouthed silently. He was so astonished that he almost spat his tongue out. Heavenly body tier blood servants were actually trembling in fright before Ling Han. It was as if they had come across their nemesis. However, he was only a measly cultivator at the Sun Moon tier. Even though he had reached the pinnacle level, he should have still been trash before heavenly body tier elites. At this moment, Xie Donglai's mind was a jumbled mess. It was as if his mind were about to become sludge. Ah! He wailed in wretched agony. With his cultivation decreased by 2 stars, how could he withstand heavenly tribulation any longer? A bolt of lightning arced down, ripping a wound that stretched from his left shoulder all the way down to his right rib. It almost tore him into 2 pieces. Why is it like this? Xie Donglai roared to the sky. You're merely a lowly peasant, so what right do you have to suppress me? Even a finger of mine is 100 times more valuable than you. Any random elite from the Xie clan would be able to suppress you billions of times over. Are you done speaking? Ling Han asked coldly. Ever since Xie Donglai had set his eyes on the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, Ling Han had already sentenced him to death. You lowly peasant, do you truly dare to kill me? Xie Donglai screamed in exasperation and anger. He had already been stretched while facing Ling Han's attacks alongside his heavenly tribulation. Now that his battle prowess had been weakened by 2 stars, how could he withstand their attacks any longer? What do you think? Do you think I'm merely playing around with you? Ling Han couldn't help but chuckle. You won't dare to kill me. Initially, Xie Donglai hadn't wanted to stoop as low as using this technique. However, he was genuinely out of options at this moment. Each member of the Xie clan has a marking planted into their body. If we die, these markings will immediately notify the elites of our clan and show them the appearance and aura of the culprit. So, if you kill me, know that the Xie clan's Grand Elder is nearby. He'll definitely rush over to slay you, a lowly peasant who dares to provoke the Xie clan. Was this true? Or was it false? Ling Han didn't care. Die. He showed no mercy as he unleashed the Divine Demon Sword. The Divine Demon Sword automatically launched an attack, its sword projections brilliant as it unleashed an astonishing battle prowess. Meanwhile, Ling Han activated the Lightning Divine pattern on his right hand, attacking Xie Donglai with Divine Lightning. These attacks were devastating. Xie Donglai was astounded. He had already warned Ling Han of the consequences, yet he still dared to attack him. If Ling Han killed him here, Xie Qian would notice immediately. With his ability as an Eternal River Tier elite, he would be able to arrive here in a single stride. Then, he would kill Ling Han with a simple smack. In order to kill him, Ling Han was willing to sacrifice himself as well. He's fucking crazy. He wasn't belittling himself, but he was indeed far worse than Ling Han when it came to talent and coming across opportunities. If it were him, he would definitely value his own life above anything else. How could he sacrifice himself to kill someone else? At this moment, he was not only scared, but also weighed down by indescribable grief. How had he come across such a madman? Chapter 1333 Killing him with my own hands. I'm not lying. There's truly a clan marking inscribed on my divine sense. This marking guards the secret technique of the Xie clan, and it'll automatically shatter if anyone attempts to force me to reveal the secret technique. At the same time, it'll also notify the elites of the Xie clan and reveal to them who was trying to dig information from me. Xie Donglai was extremely flustered, and he continued, if you kill me, the consequences will also be the same. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, you're facing heavenly tribulation right now, so if I kill you, the elites of the Xie clan will only think that you're a fool who can't even withstand his own heavenly tribulation. This. Xie Donglai's face instantly started to twitch. This was entirely possible. Gasp. Is this why Ling Han isn't backing down? He wants to give me severe wounds so that I'll eventually die by my own heavenly tribulation? How detestable. Xie Donglai suddenly turned around. He was going to flee. You think you can escape? Ling Han aggressively attacked Xie Donglai, preventing him from escaping. With Xie Donglai weakened by heaven's might, Ling Han enjoyed an overwhelming advantage. Xie Donglai frenziedly tried to escape. He didn't want to die. Countless attacks rained down on Ling Han as he fought with his life on the line. In fact, he even combusted his battle prowess and sacrificed his lifespan in order to raise his battle prowess back to its original level. Otherwise, there was simply no way he could escape from Ling Han's clutches. Meanwhile, Ling Han activated the Tide of the Ages. Now was a good time to test the might of this secret technique. Xie Donglai's attack swept over, yet Ling Han stood proud and unmoving. Xie Donglai was deeply astonished. According to his estimate, this attack should have sent Ling Han flying, giving him the opportunity to break free from his grasp and escape. As long as he could return to the Grand Elder's side, only a rare few people in the world would possess the ability to kill him. Ling Han definitely wasn't one of these people. However, how was Ling Han not sent flying? Die. Ling Han's fist hammered over, and it was as if the sky were about to shatter. Read more chapter on novel full. Pung. Xie Donglai's left shoulder instantly exploded into pieces. Only a sliver of his left arm remained connected to his shoulder, yet even this sliver of flesh looked like it would fall off at any moment. how many more strikes can you withstand? Ling Han continued to launch a flurry of punches at Xie Donglai. Pang, pang, pang. Under his heavy strikes, even heaven and earth started to shake. However, all of this commotion was concealed by heavenly tribulation. Even if someone happened to pass by, they would be completely oblivious to the fact that a bloody battle was occurring inside heavenly tribulation, unless they witnessed it with their own eyes. Of course, this battle couldn't be called a bloody battle anymore. After all, it was now a one-sided affair with Ling Han belting Xie Donglai. Xie Donglai was drenched in blood, barely any part of his body still intact. His vitality had also dropped to a dangerously low level. There was already no need for Ling Han to attack him anymore. As long as he was struck by a few more bolts of divine lightning from heavenly tribulation, he would be laid to rest in this place forever. Xie Donglai was boiling with resentment. Ling Han was clearly his killer, yet only he would know this. After he died, Ling Han could leave this place casually. In fact, he could even appear before Xie Qian without a worry in the world. It was at this moment that Ling Han stopped his attacks, turning around to leave. Xie Donglai roared in fury. Right now, even his heart was crying tears of blood. He was dying for nothing. However, there was suddenly a blur before his eyes as a figure rapidly dashed over, throwing a punch into his chest. Under the devastating power of the strike, his divine sense crumbled like broken tiles. It was Ling Han. Xie Donglai's eyes were filled with disbelief. Why had Ling Han suddenly returned to deal the killing blow? He could feel the marking in his mind fracturing. Once it shattered apart, that would mark the moment of his death. Meanwhile, the last moments that he witnessed and the last feelings that he experienced would all be transmitted to the minds of the heavenly body tier elites of the Xie clan. Almost every single Eternal River tier force possessed this kind of technique. The members of these forces would all have a marking engraved into their divine sense at birth. First of all, this marking would represent their identity as a member of the force. Second of all, this marking would protect the secret techniques of these forces, preventing them from being revealed. Third of all, this marking would act as a deterrent if one dared to harm members of these forces, their identity would be revealed, and they would be hunted until they were killed. Thus, Eternal River tier forces enjoyed a transcendent status. Successors of Eternal River tier elites could also act wantonly, with no one daring to kill them. However, Ling Han actually dared to kill him? He actually dared to reveal his identity to the Xie clan? One had to realize that there was already no need for him to return and kill him. Heavenly tribulation would have killed Xie Donglai. You thought that I wouldn't kill you with my own hands? Ling Han said as he stared into Xie Donglai's eyes. Ever since deciding to kill Xie Donglai, it was already inevitable that Xie Donglai would have to die by his hands, not by the hands of heavenly tribulation. He could only vent his anger if he killed Xie Donglai with his own hands. Xie Donglai stared at Ling Han with a stunned expression. At this moment, he didn't know whether to call Ling Han crazy or to admire his courage. Anyhow, none of this mattered anymore. He was about to die. I'll be waiting for you. In a dozen seconds at most, you'll come to accompany me. With his last breath, he spat one final sentence. Ling Han threw his fist over. Pa! Xie Donglai was smashed into smithereens. His bones and flesh disintegrated into dust, and his divine sense also turned into dust. A strange fluctuation surged out, instantly traveling a boundless distance. It was as if this fluctuation could disregard space. The heavenly tribulation that belonged to Xie Donglai quickly disappeared. Meanwhile, a strong sense of danger gripped at Ling Han's heart. A divine sense had locked onto him. It's far too powerful. The owner of this divine sense was definitely thousands of kilometers away, perhaps even further. However, their divine sense had surged over and locked onto him, capable of killing him with a single thought. This is the power of an Eternal River tier elite. This was the divine sense of Xie Qian, the Grand Elder of the Xie clan, a great general of the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire, and an elite at the high extreme of the eternal river tier. To say nothing Ling Han, even the Venerable Trinity would be insta-killed by Xie Qian if he were still alive and if he were to face his attack head-on. Right now, Great General Xie was still comprehending Tao in front of the ancient coffin. However, a wisp of his divine sense had traveled over, threatening Ling Han with death. The reason that this was only a threat was because Ling Han was still facing heavenly tribulation. If one interfered in someone else's heavenly tribulation by attacking them, they would be targeted by heavenly tribulation themselves. If one interfered in someone else's heavenly tribulation by protecting them, well, Ling Han had already experienced that. They would suffer from heavenly tribulation that was at least 10 times more powerful. Even Xie Qian didn't dare to casually involve himself in someone else's heavenly tribulation. Although he was confident in staying alive, he would definitely need to sacrifice some life force. Was it worth sacrificing his life force to kill a measly sun-moon tier cultivator? No way. Heavenly tribulations would only last for half a day, and he could afford to wait for this long. Could a measly sun-moon tier cultivator possibly escape from his grasp? This wisp of divine sense didn't speak. It didn't interrogate Ling Han about why he had killed Xie Donglai, nor did it announce in a haughty manner that those who killed members of the Xie clan would face certain death. It did none of these things. Xie Qian's wisp of divine sense simply hung around quietly. With his status and power, there was no need for him to boast before such a lowly being. They were on completely different levels, like an emperor to his peasants. Ling Han also regarded this divine sense coldly. Xie Qian's divine sense had transformed into a projection of none other than Great General Xie himself. He was suited in armor, appearing especially mighty and overbearing. Killing intent oozed from his body. However, Ling Han was unafraid as he stared at this eternal river tier elite. Quang. Heavenly tribulation continued to descend, yet Ling Han didn't bat an eyelid. He stared at Xie Qian just like that, as if he wanted to challenge this elite. Perhaps my strength is far inferior to yours, but my will is as strong as heaven. You can't suppress me. Astonishment gradually spread across the face of Xie Qian's projection. Who could overcome heavenly tribulation so easily? Thus, even though Great General Xie had seen many elites, and even though he was accustomed to witnessing death and experiencing dangers, he was still filled with a sense of astonishment. He had never witnessed someone facing heavenly tribulation with such ease before. Ling Han had actually astounded an eternal river tier elite. If news of this got out, he would definitely shoot to fame. Chapter 1334 Confrontation with Eternal River Tier. One younger and the other older, one stronger and the other weaker, and both were standing on opposite sides of each other. The difference in strength was as large a disparity as the gulf between heaven and earth, but in terms of aura, Ling Han was not the slightest bit inferior. How many people would dare look an eternal river tier in the eye like this? Putting aside the clash of eye contact like this, even a sliver of the aura from an eternal river tier would be able to crush a sun-moon tier into dust. It is unfortunate that you are not a member of our Xie clan. After a while, Xie Qian spoke up, and said such words in an incredibly regretful tone. This was the first person he had seen that could endure the heavenly tribulation with such ease. Even he, an elite of eternal river tier, had to admit he was impressed, and was filled with strong admiration for Ling Han. However, it was too bad. Who asked Ling Han to have killed his descendant? Members of the Xie clan could not be humiliated. Hence, he could only feel regret because a future king tier, or perhaps even a top-grade elite, would soon die in his hands. This caused him to feel regretful and rueful at the waste of precious resources. But it was only that. He had been alive for several 100 million years, so how could it be that the number of prodigies who died at his hand would be few? To an elite of eternal river tier, a half-day's time would be like a blink of an eye, and would very soon pass. The heavenly tribulation dispersed as suddenly as it had appeared. It ended astonishingly quickly, without the slightest warning. Quang, after the last bolt of lightning had descended, the thunderclouds that filled the skies completely disappeared in a single instant. Xie Qian made his move. As he stretched out his right hand, a galaxy appeared, where several 100 million stars were floating, and it pressed down on Ling Han. Every star was filled with the power of a heavenly body tier elite, and with several 100 million attacking at the same time, it was equivalent to the power capable of destruction of a world. And this was only a sliver of divine sense from Xie Qian. Boom! Read more chapter on novel full. When this attack landed, a massive pit was blasted into the ground. It was as wide as 100 miles and a dozen over miles deep, showing how terrifying the power of an eternal river tier elite was. And this was still because this was the two-realm battlefield, which was located in a strange space. Otherwise, if he had used the same attack in the outside world, then there would definitely not have been the slightest hint of life left within 10,000 miles from the epicenter. The crushed rocks and dust formed a huge mushroom cloud, which rose up into the skies. A sliver of shock appeared on Xie Qian's face. That was because in the instant before his attack landed on Ling Han, the latter had disappeared. He curled his hand carelessly, and a gust of wind instantly rose up, sweeping aside all the dust and rubble that filled the area. Where was he? A pondering look appeared on Xie Qian's face. He definitely had not sensed the shock wave that came from a rip in space, so Ling Han could not have fled with any kind of instant teleportation seal. Furthermore, it would also need time to activate instant teleportation. With that attack from him, even if Ling Han possessed an instant teleportation seal, he would not have been able to use it. Moreover, this place caused the range of his attack to decrease greatly, but it was also the same for an instant teleportation seal. Even if Ling Han had truly teleported instantly, he would not have been able to escape out of the range of his attack. He would still have died. However, Ling Han had disappeared as if he was air itself. Strange. Xie Qian mumbled involuntarily. It had already been many years since he was last moved, yet today, because of a sun-moon tier youth, he had been moved 2 subsequent times. I am really now quite curious. What tricks has this boy actually gotten hold of? He released his divine sense from his body, and it rapidly stretched out over this area, searching for Ling Han's whereabouts. Doing this instantly caused the other heavenly body tier elites to feel shock. What did you mean by releasing your divine sense for no rhyme or reason? Were you trying to pick a fight? Eternal river tiers were too powerful, and if they released their divine sense without any qualms, they could all extend it for 10,000 miles. They could release a powerful attack in this effective area, just like how he had attacked Ling Han previously. If this was his own territory, that was fine. So what if he released his divine sense? Who would dare to care? But this place was different. There were several dozen Eternal River tier elites, and if anyone released their divine sense, it could possibly be treated like a provocation by the others. Putting aside the fact that there were still Netherworld elites here, even if they all belonged to the same force, they might not be able to trust him to this extent and allow themselves to be enshrouded by the divine sense of another. What if he suddenly rose in revolt? Then it would be indefinite what kind of suffering would await them. Before this, every Eternal River tier elite had all pulled back their divine sense into a very, very small range to avoid provoking others and causing an unnecessary misunderstanding. But precisely because of this, no one would think that Xie Qian would have been so outrageously bold to actually want to oppose all the Eternal River tiers here. Putting aside the fact that Xie Qian's battle prowess might not be the strongest here, even if it was, being ganged up by so many other elites, he would definitely be finished as well. Thus, everyone was curious. What was this Xie Qian doing? Xie Qian was not in the mood to care what the others were thinking. He did not think that he would be ganged up on. After all, they were all Eternal River tier elites. If there was not deadly feud between them, they would not rashly start a fight. Of course, he could not go too far either. Otherwise, once an alliance formed, then he could only flee pathetically. He would definitely lose and die if he went head-on against them. But no matter how much he stretched out his divine sense in search, he did not find Ling Han's whereabouts anywhere. This caused his expression to become increasingly odd, and also more serious. There were already not many things that could cause him to look at with much importance, but this definitely could be considered as one of them. Xie Qian, have you done enough? An eternal river tier elite asked coldly. Stretching out his divine sense without qualms like this, weren't you deliberately provoking them? Once was enough, but if you continue to do so, that was a little too far, wasn't it? Did you really think that you were the king of eternal river tier? Xie Qian frowned. He knew that the tolerance level of the other elites had reached their limit. Immediately, he slowly drew back his divine sense. This divine sense was like the sea waters that were at low tide and quickly retreated from all directions, and when his divine sense retreated to that ancient coffin, he suddenly started. Woo! He released a muffled humph, his expression instantly twisting in an inhuman look. His divine sense went berserk like a tsunami, and began a barrage. Ah! It was in that one instant that at least a few hundred people had their spirits directly shattered and became zombies, and there was an eternal river tier elite from the netherworld in that area as well. He had also been attacked by Xie Qian's divine sense, so he immediately flew into a thunderous rage. With a loud roar, he began to attack Xie Qian. However, he had not yet shot out his palm when his expression turned ashen in shock. That was because Xie Qian's present appearance was too appalling. Black blood was pouring out of all his apertures. If this happened to a mortal, he would definitely not be living too long after. Immortals naturally would not die just from bleeding from their apertures, but a great eternal river tier elite would actually look so tragic. What exactly was wrong with him? Killing members of our netherworld, do you not feel that you should provide an explanation? This elite of the netherworld asked coldly. Those who had died just now were all people of the netherworld, and furthermore, they were all related to him. Otherwise, they would not have been qualified to stay by his side. Yet Xie Qian only acted as if he had not heard anything. His hands were covering his ears, and increasing amounts of black blood surged out from his eyes, nostrils, mouth, and ears. The blood seeped through his fingers, and 4 heavenly bodies appeared, but each heavenly body was actually exploding. Every heavenly body that exploded would mean a slight decline in the power of an eternal river tier. Though there were several tens of thousands stars in the galaxy, it could not hold up to such depletion either. Not too long after, they would all explode into nothing. How different was this from committing suicide? Crazy, he had really gone crazy. Chapter 1335 Rapid Change of Events. Xie Qian's hair was down, his face covered with black blood. He looked like a vengeful ghost. One after another, heavenly bodies exploded, forming a frightening shock wave, and what was more astonishing was the fact that Xie Qian's spirit was also burning. Those in the range of several thousand miles from him could all see this clearly. Bai Chong, you actually dared to sneak attack an elite of our immortal realm. Dressed in bright yellow robes, Gu Su stepped out, exuding a powerful, forceful aura. He was a leading character of the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire, as well as the great-grandson of the Crimson Flame Emperor. He was thought of as the most likely person to inherit the imperial throne, and indeed had the majestic presence of an emperor. Even if one's cultivation level was equal to his, there were extremely few people that could match him in terms of forcefulness. Previously, the netherworld elite that had been attacked by Xie Qian's divine sense, who was also that Bai Chong Gu Su was speaking of, couldn't help but look furious. What had this to do with him? He was the one who had had a sneak attack launched on him, all right? Just look, he hadn't even fought back, and had already seen Xie Qian's whole face was covered with filthy blood. He looked like he didn't want to live, and couldn't continue to live, but was this even the slightest bit related to him? If he truly had had such power, would he have had to tolerate and be patient previously? He would have merely directly cast a glare and thrown over a punishment. If the person that had spoken up to reprimand him was a minor character, he would naturally not be angered. Instead, he would directly stretch out a hand and press it down on the speaker. However, this person was presently Gu Su. Whether it was status or abilities, the latter was superior to him. This caused him to feel both angered and aggrieved. Fuck, what basis did he have for wronging him? Gusu, have your eyes gone blind? An elite from the netherworld side also walked out. He was dressed in a green suit of robes, and looked to be no different from any ordinary person, but his eyes were astonishingly like two rubies, which made him look very bizarre. Gusu couldn't help but look solemn. Regarding the passageway of the two realms in the Cloud Apex planet, the other end was the long-wind planet of the netherworld, and this man was the imperial uncle of the Green Gauze Imperial Empire of the long-wind planet, Xie Donglai. He was a considerably powerful elite with an extremely far-reaching history. He accused Bai Chong of launching a sneak attack because Xie Qian's reaction had been too profound and baffling. Furthermore, it was also a blow to the morale of the whole immortal realm. Just look, they hadn't even started fighting, and you were already bleeding from all your apertures, so frightened that you exploded your heavenly bodies on your own initiative. But if he declared that it was because he had received a sneak attack from the netherworld, the result would be different. He looked at Xie Donglai, his gaze sinister. In the first place, it was impossible for the two realms of the immortal realm and the netherworld to have peaceful relations, and this had been decided based on the shape of their lives. It was also decided by the regulations of the two realms. The only reason why the two sides had not started fighting was because the ancient Coffin implicated too much, so both sides were tolerating the other. Now, Xie Qian suddenly went crazy, and this had become the last straw, instantly causing the atmosphere to become incredibly tense. Ah, Xie Qian shouted loudly. He was burning his own spirit, and had shattered his own heavenly bodies. In that short instant, his battle prowess could be said to have risen to its maximum, easily breaking through the limits of the high extreme of Eternal River Tier, and reached the peak of the consummate level. This was an explosive burst that came from burning one's spirit, and there was no way back. Even if a saint moved, he would not be able to reverse this process. Which also meant that Xie Qian was definitely dying, but when he had yet to die, his battle prowess would also become incredibly frightening. He could practically turn up his nose on the whole Eternal River Tier. He was no longer shattering his own heavenly bodies, but was rather beginning to attack the masses. Boom! It was earth-shattering and incredibly terrifying. Moreover, he completely did not differentiate between his companions and enemies. He attacked the netherworld beings as well as those from the immortal realm. Damn it! Damn! The expressions of all the elites changed drastically. Though they were all in the Eternal River Tier, there were still 4 differing levels of Eternal River Tier. There were very few that could advance into the consummate level. Now that Xie Qian's battle prowess was shockingly in the consummate level, or had even reached the peak extent, it could be claimed that even if the Crimson Flame Emperor and the Blue Cloud Emperor arrived personally, they would not dare say that they could surely suppress Xie Qian. If this kind of elite suddenly went berserk, who wouldn't be scared witless? Those below the consummate level had all joined forces, otherwise, they would only be killed by Xie Qian. Those in the consummate level, meanwhile, needed not be so pathetic, and could hold on with their own battle prowess. Boom! 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 This was a battle on the level of the Eternal River Tier. If they had started the battle in an ordinary situation, it would have been conducted in the skies, but now it had started in the middle of a crowd. This naturally caused extremely frightening death and injury. In those few breaths' time, at least 1/3 of the people had been killed by the shock waves from the battle. This was a slaughter that differentiated between no one. Both the immortal realm and the netherworld were treated the same. There was still a considerable number that had not died, and they all used their strongest treasures. They had been given these treasures by the Eternal River Tier elites. Otherwise, even one on the level of Heavenly Body Tier would be useless. Once a shock wave swept over them, even one at the peak of the Heavenly Body Tier would be turned into dust, so what kind of defensive effect could the treasure they forged have? You deserve death. Now, not only had the eyes of the elites of the netherworld turned bloodshot, even those of the immortal realm were no exception. There were really too many prodigies of the younger generation in this place, but how many could possess Eternal River Tier level or even saint level treasures like Qi Huangji and the Stone Emperor? There were innumerable casualties and fatalities. It was only a short instant, yet the whole cultivation world of the long light galaxy would probably decline to a drastic extent for the next 10 million years. Of course, the netherworld was the same. The effects of this would be very far-reaching. These elites all moved with their all, wanting to kill Xie Qian to prevent him from prolonging the slaughter. Normally, so many elites joining forces would be sufficient to suppress any Eternal River tier elite, but the problem was that Xie Qian had already gone insane. He was burning the fires of his soul and was extremely crazy. He completely did not care if he would be wounded or if he would die. With this level of craziness, who else could stop him? Xie Qian barged around violently, and the masses could only resist his attacks. Thankfully, the fires of the spirit would be exhausted eventually at most in about 1 day's time. Even if it was an elite of Eternal River tier like this, with an incredibly strong spirit, there would still come a time when it would be completely burnt to nothing. Amidst this kind of chaos, no one realized that the spirits of those living beings that had been killed had floated into the ancient coffin one after another. No, it should be said that the ancient coffin was releasing a mysterious attraction, causing those spirits that should have returned to nature to become incapable of returning to the heaven and earth, being forcefully sucked into the ancient coffin instead. There was also a change discernible to no one taking place in this mountain-like coffin, because this was a trick performed by a severing mundane elite. Even saints could not possibly detect this. Those below Eternal River tier had all began to flee. Thankfully, there was a great number of Eternal River tier elites helping them to forcibly restrain Xie Qian in a certain range. This gave the rest a chance to flee. However, one after another, terrifying shock waves of energy were still wreaking havoc, and if they were caught in them, the only result would be death. It was only such king tiers like the Stone Emperor and the others, who themselves were in the heavenly body tier and also possessed rare treasures, that could easily flee as far as 10,000 miles away. Finally, they left the range of Xie Qian's attacks. As for the others, even those like the Cloud Maiden and Yuing were battered and exhausted. If they had not died, it was already thanks to their sheer good luck. No matter how much of a prodigy they were still so weak as to be unable to withstand a single blow in front of an Eternal River tier elite. Even so, 99% of the young people present here had all died. A great number of living souls had been sucked into the ancient coffin, stimulating the ancient coffin to begin a further change. Ka, ka, ka. Loud sounds were heard from the ancient coffin, and the coffin lid was actually slowly opening. Chapter 1336 Great Slaughter. An ancient coffin that seemed as if it would not change for eternity suddenly released a loud commotion. Instantly, this caused the hearts of all the surrounding Eternal River tier elites to clench. Even if they had never experienced it themselves, they had also heard of this kind of legend. An incredibly powerful existence left behind a fated opportunity. As long as someone could help his daughter reincarnate and come back to life, they would be taught a supreme secret technique as reward. All of a sudden, they all wanted to stop fighting to snatch this fated opportunity. However, the world changed whether you wanted it or not. Xie Qian was like a mad dog and was still unendingly attacking. He had completely lost all his reason, and his only remaining thought was killing and death. A grand Eternal River tier elite had actually fallen to this level. Just the mere thought of it would make one sigh. Cracking sounds were still ringing out from the ancient coffin. The top that had initially been like a part of one solid object had separated, revealing a massive coffin lid. Like a thundercloud, it was astonishingly huge, casting a very long shadow. The elites were all filled with expectation. Perhaps the key to their surpassing the Eternal River tier and advancing into saint level lay here. Boom! A pillar of light shot up into the skies, directly blasting a hole in the ground above it. It penetrated the chaotic space of the two-realm battlefield, and at the same time shot into the skies of the immortal realm and the netherworld, exuding endless brilliance. It was brighter than the sun, and could be seen clearly even if one was an entire galaxy away. All the Eternal River tier elites flew up into the skies, wanting to begin a fierce competition. But it was at this moment that the light pillar that had shot up into the skies actually began to spin at an incredibly fast rate. Even eternal river tears were unable to evade. Schwa, in an instant, it had spun several tens of thousands of times. Ah, all the eternal river tear elites released terrible cries. To their horror, they realized that their spirits had been ignited, their heavenly bodies shattering automatically as if they were adding flammable liquid to their spirits, causing their spirits to burn fiercer and fiercer. It was completely unstoppable. This was rushing on the path to death. The only difference separating them from Xie Qian was that one had lost all reason, and had completely no idea what he was doing, whereas they clearly realized what was happening now, and this also scared them out of their wits. Death was not frightening, but watching helplessly as they walked towards death, this kind of experience was definitely not something anyone could bear. Yet no one could resist. Even the great elites of the Eternal River Tier could only watch helplessly as their souls burnt brightly. Their life essence was being released in an extremely short amount of time. How shocking was it to have so much life essence from Eternal River Tier elites? Innumerable grass and flowers actually sprouted on this barren land in a single instant. These stalks of green grass were visibly boring out of the ground, sprouting, growing leaves, and flourishing well. Finally, flowers bloomed. A fragrance wafted in this air, causing this underground world to transform into a place like paradise on earth. However, the price for this was too massive. Several dozen eternal river tears were endlessly burning up their life and vitality just to exhibit this show to present the miracle of life. Every eternal river tear elite released furious roars, trying their best to struggle out of this crisis, but it was useless. A powerful energy that far surpassed their life level was acting on them, reducing them to meat on a chopping board which could only be slaughtered as the cook pleased. Just like Xie Qian, they could only persist for a single day at most. At the end of the day, they would all be burnt to nothing. Even if their bodies were still present, without their spirits, they would only be mere corpses. This was a great slaughter, and was also a tragedy that had not happened in the long light galaxy for billions of years. Several dozen Eternal River Tier elites were all simultaneously slaughtered, setting a new precedent. In the Black Tower, Ling Han and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden were both dumbfounded with shock. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was shocked from hearing Ling Han's retelling of the present situation, which caused her to be incredibly stunned. In her eyes, Eternal River Tier was equivalent to an invincible being, yet now these invincible elites were completely helpless, and their spirits were all burning. Looks like Ding Zizhen had not told us the complete truth, Ling Han uttered darkly. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden nodded. Every Eternal River Tears would be burnt, and perhaps even saints would be helpless as well. Then who else in this world would be able to revive Dingling? Not only had he not told us the truth, I'm afraid we have been used, she deduced. The reason that Ding Zizhen buried his daughter here is probably related to the fact that this place is the two-realm battlefield. Ling Han nodded. In these millions of years, who knows how many people have died, and how much blood has been spilled in this place. Though I do not know how exactly the spirit of a dead person could be regathered, I think it should be linked to death and bloodshed. Then the two-realm battlefield would be the most suitable place. Accumulation for millions of years. It has probably reached a certain critical point, and that is why this place has appeared, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden continued. Making living people into a blood sacrifice should probably be a procedure of the second stage, Ling Han said. The 5 sects could refine a realm pill, so Ding Zizhen's methods must be even more astonishing. Using souls as his raw materials to refine a truly incredible alchemical pill to regather the soul of a person who has been dead for who knows how many years so she would be reincarnated and come back to life, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden said. The two of them shared a look, and could more or less deduce the truth of the matter. But the problem was they were completely incapable of interfering, and could only sit and watch in the Black Tower. If they went out, the only path was death. I hope Rabbit and that perverted ginseng are all right. Faceless and the others should have already fled. Ling Han sighed. Probably. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden nodded. Faceless and the other king tiers fled fast enough, and their abilities were considerably extraordinary as well, so it should have been no problem for them to escape. Although the cultivation level of rabbit and old ginseng was not high, they were extremely slippery. Their skill in escaping was top grade. If it was in mere terms of survival abilities, they could be compared to a heavenly body tier. But the Purple Moon Divine Maiden would be, Ling Han and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden spoke at the same time, but fell silent all of a sudden. They were both indebted to the Purple Moon Divine Maiden, but in the present situation, it was completely impossible for them to go out and rescue the Purple Moon Divine Maiden. This caused them to feel terrible, and at the same time, were filled with fury towards Ding Zizhen. It was one matter for you to want to revive your daughter, but to make so many pay with their lives, that was too demented. From a certain aspect, there was no difference between Ding Zizhen and the 5 sects. They had both killed innumerable living beings through their schemes. Pa. One after another, elites burnt their flame of life completely, their bodies collapsing. On the surface, they did not seem to have the slightest injury, but in truth, their souls were already gone, so they had died completely and absolutely. Boom! Another pillar of light shot out of the ancient coffin, and it was far wider than the previous one. In the middle of this pillar of light, the figure of a woman was slowly appearing. Her limbs were drooping as if she was asleep, but also as if she was in a coma. At present, she was only left with skin wrapped around her bones. She was dressed in a long green skirt that fluttered lightly in the breeze. A strange event followed. Her skin was presently becoming plump as if the water of life had been injected into her body. Starting from her right leg, her dry skin was rapidly becoming tender and soft, and then continuing upwards. However, it was only limited to one half of her body. It could be clearly seen that her initially shriveled hip was slowly becoming erect, solidifying, becoming well-rounded, and her breasts were also slowly raising up, with a deep ravine between the 2 mountains, astonishingly curvaceous. Finally, it was the face. Her lips were like fire and her complexion like jade. Her hair had also recovered its luster, revealing a beautiful set of features. However, this was also only one half of her body. Xiao, the pillar of light suddenly vanished, and that woman was still standing in midair. Her eyelids trembled, and she opened her eyes. Pretty unclear how the halves are divided. It sounds like the front half, maybe? Could be just left or right, but it doesn't sound like it. Chapter 1337 A Sorrowful Conclusion. Boom, a frightening aura spread out. It was saint level. In this galaxy, this was an invincible force. Unless the celestial realm sent out an army, no one could match that kind of power. However, this incredibly powerful woman grabbed her head as she screamed in pain. A frightening shock wave of power spread out from her, sending boundless waves of dust. Boom, 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 they shot out into all directions. Pa, cracks also appeared on the ancient coffin beneath her, and it suddenly shattered, turning into millions of pieces. This should not have been caused by her, but rather said that this ancient coffin had completed its mission. Otherwise, wouldn't any saint be able to come and open the coffin, and thus ruin Ding Zizhen's plans? Why have I become like this? This woman wailed to the skies, her voice filled with resentment. The present her could definitely not be considered any kind of beauty. She couldn't even be considered a normal person. One side of her was beautiful as jade, whereas the other side was skeletal in appearance. To a woman who prized beauty, this was unacceptable. Furthermore, even if she reached Genesis tier, she could not possibly regrow her flesh and blood, because this had not come from an injury. Rather, it was the reassembly of a departed soul and reigniting life and vitality in a body that had long aged and died. This method could be considered nature-defying, yet there was obviously a miscalculation on Ding Zizhen's part. Though he had revived her, only one half of her body had recovered vitality and life. This was a fight with the heaven and earth. No matter how powerful you, as a saint, were, how could you possibly win a fight against the heavens? Thus, it was definitely impossible that she could heal the other half of her body, unless the same method was used another time. However, the ancient coffin had been destroyed. It should be the key to the process, and without this kind of object, this woman obviously would have to live on with this kind of bizarre appearance. If Ding Zizhen had not lied on this matter, this woman should be Ding Ling. She released an enraged shout, sounding incredibly severe. Boom! 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 She waved her fists endlessly, pounding the ground until it was all scattered and smashed. However, this place was the two-realm passageway, where strange regulations were active. Furthermore, the composition of heaven and earth here was extraordinarily sturdy, so it had actually withstood the full force of a saint wreaking havoc. I hate you. I hate you. Ding Ling called out loudly, and suddenly slapped a palm into her own forehead. Pa! Her forehead suddenly exploded, and even her whole body had turned into innumerable bits and pieces. She had only been revived for a few breaths' time, and she had actually committed suicide. Xiao, her body turned into nothing, but a crystal that was only the size of a finger dropped down from the skies. It had actually withstood the full power of a saint without being destroyed. Ling Han recounted the scene he had witnessed to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was initially stunned, but then sighed. She said, if I was her, I may choose the same end. Why? Ling Han asked. To a woman, especially a beautiful woman, beauty is the most important, and its importance has even surpassed the importance of life, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden said slowly, filled with sympathy. If my appearance was ruined, I definitely would not want to see you again. I would rather commit suicide and destroy my own body so that you would eternally remember me when I was at my most beautiful. Ling Han shook his head and took her lightly into his arms. He said, never have that kind of idea. As long as you are still alive, everything could be changed, but if you are dead, that would be the end. Nothing could be changed by then. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden nodded, but Ling Han knew that she had not heard what he had said. If she was really unable to recover her beauty, she would still make the same choice that Ding Ling had. Women would be so incomprehensible at times. Ling Han sighed, and came out of the Black Tower together with the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. There was still a majestic aura undulating in the air. That was the aura that belonged to a saint. Even if she had died, it could still exist for a very, very long time. This kind of ending was probably something that Ding Zizhen could not have possibly imagined. He'd spent all this strenuous effort, and schemed for who knew how many years, yet his daughter committed suicide right after coming back to life. But according to Ling Han's deduction, even if he'd known this would have been the conclusion, there would have still been no change to Ding Zizhen's decision. He would have still chosen to use innumerable lives in exchange for a chance for his daughter to revive. Even if it was just a short instant, he would be satisfied. That was because he had tried his best, and had given his daughter the chance to make a choice instead of dying helplessly in the hands of his fiancée. Ling Han couldn't help but ask himself. If it was him who had this kind of chance, what would he do? Would he become crazy for his son's sake? No matter what, the only thing you can depend on is having extremely strong abilities, Ling Han said. Only when one was strong enough could he prevent a tragedy from happening, and no matter how much compensation was made after the matter was over, there would still be regrets left after. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden nodded. When she saw Ding Ling's end, she was also filled with a strong feeling of vigilance. Ling Han picked up the crystal that Ding Ling had left behind, and it was in that single instant that a memory that did not belong to him suddenly appeared in his mind. At the same time, he felt as if someone was staring at him. This memory was the complete tide of the ages. The golden sand extracted from here could not possibly contain Ding Zizhen's complete memories, after all. Thus, though Small Tower had extracted one tide of the ages, which had also been grasped by Ling Han, it could not be considered as the true tide of the ages, but now it was complete. This crystal, could it be a precious treasure that Ding Zizhen had brought out from his fiancée's clan? Was that why it could condense a departed soul through these many, many years to allow Ding Ling to come back to life? And since Ding Ling possessed the bloodline of the Ding clan, she naturally also possessed Tide of the Ages. Ding Zizhen had tricked everyone. He completely had not planned to teach this secret technique of his clan to anyone. However, life was variable, and it had still fallen into Ling Han's possession. Still, what about that feeling of being observed? Since this was the treasure of some force of the celestial realm, it had to have its own mark. Perhaps it had been suppressed by the ancient Coffin, and so did not leak out, but now that it had fallen into Ling Han's hands, this mark was activated, allowing that clan in the celestial realm to discover his existence. Ling Han hurriedly entered into the Black Tower with the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Time was too short, and perhaps that clan still could not confirm his exact location, but his appearance and aura were probably all known to the latter. They had not even entered into the celestial realm yet, and were already in trouble. Ling Han used the power of the Black Tower to wash away all signs on the crystal, and then began seclusion with the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden needed a large amount of time for appreciation to increase the extent of the regulations of heaven and earth that she could grasp and increase her level at the pinnacle level as much as possible until she reached the peak. Ling Han was also just a mere step away from the peak of the pinnacle level. He, too, needed an extremely large amount of time to break through to the heavenly body tier. The powerful figures of the Xie clan all knew that Xie Donglai had died by his hand, and while Xie Qian had died, there were still heavenly body tier elites in the Xie clan, though their exact cultivation level was unknown. Thus, if Ling Han wanted to go back and destroy the 5 sects, he had to first have enough power to oppose the Xie clan. Otherwise, he would have to crush the 5 sects on one end whilst having to deal with being hunted down by the Xie clan. What was he to do then? Hence, he would rather charge up to the heavenly body tier in a single go, and then seek out the 5 sects to call them to account. In any case, it was only a matter of a few years. The two of them entered into seclusion. With the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill, they did not have to worry about the accumulation of origin power, and merely had to concentrate on increasing the appreciation of their cultivation level. Very soon, Ling Han ingested the last Berserk Blood Spirit Pill that he could take, and pushed his cultivation level all the way up to the peak of the pinnacle level. Next, he began to seclude himself to understand the mysteries of the heavenly body tier. Theoretically, he had not used much time to enter into pinnacle level, so he should advance into the heavenly body tier at an even more rapid rate. Yet the truth was not so. He kept feeling as if there was a barrier in the heaven and earth, which caused him to be unable to cross over even after a long time. He came out of seclusion, and asked for guidance from the notionless saint. Only then did he know that there was a so-called age barrier. There was number 100-year-old heavenly body tier in this world. Ling Han naturally would not believe that. How old was Hunyo? Not only had she long since entered into the heavenly body tier, she had even rushed all the way up to Genesis tier. So, how could there be a so-called 100-year-old age barrier? And this could possibly be relevant to beings of the immortal realm. Thus, Ling Han could only spend more time on comprehension. At first, he had thought it would be an additional few months' time at most, but the time required had far surpassed his expectations. Depending on the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill to forcibly increase the accumulation of origin power finally revealed its disadvantage at this moment. Every 3 months, Ling Han would stop to temper his body in immortal flame. 3 months had passed in the outside world, but in truth, he had comprehended Tao for close to 100 years. 200 years, 300 years, 400 years, time passed quietly by. Ling Han was still unable to take that most crucial step. This allowed him to know that the reincarnation tree also had its limits. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden had already ingested another Berserk Blood Spirit Pill, and under the condition that she was comprehending Tao beneath the reincarnation tree, she had advanced into the late stage of the pinnacle level. Another 3 years later, she had finally advanced into the peak of the pinnacle level. By now, she had already caught up to Ling Han in terms of cultivation level. But this soon became a matter of the past, because Ling Han finally attained enough appreciation of cultivation, and the great doors to the heavenly body tier opened up to him. Chapter 1338 Breaking Through to Heavenly Body Tier. The heavenly body tier meant to birth heavenly bodies in one's dantian. In theory, suns and moons could also be considered heavenly bodies, but on the path of cultivation, this was different. From the sun-moon tier to heavenly body tier, it represented an evolution of the inner world, becoming more and more well-developed. Just like how cultivators could fly after breaking off from gravity, this was a qualitative improvement, and flight that could traverse between planets, or even galaxies, was an even more colossal change. The heavenly body tier was like that. Even though he merely had to condense a single star now, the difficulty level was extraordinarily high. It was high enough to cause Ling Han to have to comprehend Tao underneath the reincarnation tree for more than 2,000 years, and only then did he attain the required understanding. This time was not the slightest bit long. Sun-moon tiers could possess 4 million years of lifespan, at most, but how many people in the consummate level of the sun-moon tier would spend their whole lives striving and die of old age, still trapped on this level? They were uncountable. Even for those who could cross over this barrier, they would have to spend about 1 million years at least. Of course, there were also prodigies like the Stone Emperor and Qi Huangji, who could break through in 100 to 200 years. That definitely had to be because they had borrowed the help of some kind of treasure. Just like Ling Han, though he had comprehended Tao for more than 2,000 years, the fact was that only 6 years had passed in the outside world. Completing the crossover in 6 years' time, no one would be able to believe this if he told them. Yet Ling Han did not become complacent. He had thought of Hunyo. How many forces were there like the rock palace in the celestial realm? Even if they could not nurture a Genesis tier every 5 years, if they could even produce one every 50 or 500 years, how many young prodigies were there in the whole celestial realm then? It was just like there were very few shattering void tiers in the small world, but what about in the immortal realm? Cultivating a few years, and they could reach this kind of height, and in the celestial realm, perhaps a great many people would already be on this cultivation level upon birth. Since he had come from a small world, it was definite that he would have to blaze a new trail, and begin from the lowest level. Ling Han did not think this was a weakness. Contrarily, the fact that he walked all the way from the beginning allowed him to stabilize and strengthen his foundations to an even sturdier extent. Furthermore, any force with the slightest bit of power in the immortal realm would send their juniors into a small world, where they would return through opening the sky, to compensate for their natural disadvantage. Random thoughts sped through Ling Han's head, and an incredibly brilliant point of light lit up in his dantian. This was the model of the heavenly body. Ling Han was filled with anticipation for the heavenly body tier. When he reached the heavenly body tier, the 5th floor of the Black Tower would be opened, and the 5 elements would be complete. He would then be able to further grasp the indestructible heaven scroll. Additionally, the notionless saint would also be able to restore his body and walk out of the Black Tower. That was a saint, and though he had to start all over again, he would definitely improve his abilities at a frighteningly fast rate. More importantly, only heavenly body tiers would be able to fly in the immortal realm. Come! Ling Han said to the heavens, his black locks dancing in the wind, exuding an intimidating aura. Boom! Thunderclouds suddenly gathered densely, and blazing white lightning could vaguely be seen flashing within. He could also see a sliver of blue lightning, though it was not very obvious. The might of the lightning had been improved. Ling Han had heard that the heavenly tribulation of a saint was completely filled with blue lightning. Meanwhile, the reason why heavenly body tiers could be considered elites in the immortal realm was because there was a sliver of blue lightning in the heavenly tribulation they had to endure. It was a mere sliver, yet it caused Ling Han to feel a powerful sense of danger. It was not that he had not experienced the heavenly tribulation of a heavenly body tier. Previously, when he had fought with Xie Donglai, the latter had been going through a heavenly tribulation, and had even attempted to stimulate the power of the heavenly tribulation to target him. However, the power of Xie Donglai's heavenly tribulation had definitely not been as powerful as this. This was very normal. One had broken through from the consummate level, whereas the other was breaking through from the pinnacle level. Though both of them were advancing into heavenly body tier, how could the difference in might be less than 10,000-fold? In the tribulation clouds of Xie Donglai, there was so little blue-colored lightning that it was practically invisible, and he had still sent some splashes onto Ling Han, so its might was naturally even smaller. Come. Come. Ling Han was filled with anticipation. The more powerful the heavenly tribulation, the stronger the might of lightning he would naturally be able to grasp. Unfortunately, he did not have enough godly metal in his possession to improve the divine demon sword, which made him feel extremely regretful. Quang. As if it had sensed Ling Han's provocation, the first flash of heavenly tribulation suddenly descended, forming a lightning bolt that was as wide as 30,000 meters. Ling Han was unafraid. His physique had already advanced to the height of level 9 godly metal, and even if this heavenly body tier heavenly tribulation was obviously tens of thousands times stronger, it would not pose much of a threat to him. On the contrary, he took the initiative to shatter his godly bones to be tempered by the heavenly tribulation. This was his true trial. In these 6 years, he had gone through 20-odd times of tempering his physique through immortal flame altogether, and had more or less reached small accomplishment level in his grasp of rising from the ashes. Now, he could recover to a state of body of about 18 years old upon ending his tempering of the physique through the immortal flame, even if there was a slight sliver of shortcoming. Moreover, he had completely regained all the abilities that he should have. However, both he and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden had been cultivating in seclusion all that while, so there had not been any time for him to seek out the heavenly phoenix divine maiden to show how manly he was. Understanding endlessly swept through Ling Han's heart. He had already shattered into innumerable pieces of bone and bits of flesh as dense as the stars in the sky, but a mysterious power allowed him to maintain his life energy, and that was because he had cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll to a certain extent. If it had been another person who did the same, they would have definitely experienced a severe wound to their vitality. At the center of these stars, a point of light was incredibly bright, and it was presently growing in size. At first, it was really just a point of light, but now, it was about the size of his little finger, exuding the power of a heavenly body. This was Ling Han's first heavenly body. After opening these great doors, a different scene appeared in front of Ling Han's eyes. He only had to concentrate, and he could grasp multiple orbits sweeping through the heaven and earth. Those were the regulations of the heaven and earth. They flashed and then disappeared, so it was extremely difficult to glimpse their movement. Thus, grasping the regulations would be a long and drawn-out process. Ling Han grasped these orbits. The first one he had to grasp was the power of flight. This was not difficult. That was because the regulations concerning flight numbered the most, and streaked through the heaven and earth most frequently. No wonder every heavenly body tier was capable of flight, that was because this was the easiest ability to grasp. Half a day's time passed. With a thought, a drop of indestructible true fluid was channeled through his body, and he immediately recovered to his prime condition. "Rise," he said lightly, and his feet suddenly left the ground. He stood in midair, floating. He had cast away the restrictions of the ground. Ling Han laughed loudly. With a thought, he rose through the skies, and traveled back and forth through the heaven and earth at an astonishingly fast speed. This was a qualitative change from sun-moon tier to heavenly body tier, so his speed had naturally exceeded his previous speed a great many times. From this moment on, I can finally be somewhat considered an elite. Ling Han exhaled, a smile shaping his expression. There were a lot of things he had to do, but the first one was to rebuild a body for the notionless saint. Ling Han went back into the Black Tower. He immediately discovered that this precious tool was different, but he could not put his finger on exactly what was different about it. Small Tower appeared, and calmly said, "With all 5 elements complete, you can think of it as a true world of its own." Ling Han did not manage to ask the details, and so said, "I want to rebuild a body for the notionless saint. How should I do that?" Chapter 1339 5-Element Body. Simple. Using the power of the 5 elements, you would be able to build a 5-element body, Small Tower said calmly, appearing completely nonchalant. True. The Black Tower should also be an ultimate precious treasure in the celestial realm as well, and in the celestial realm, there had to be plenty of saints. Hence, in the eyes of Small Tower, the notionless saint had to be no stronger than any ordinary dog. Teach me, Ling Han said. This was something that he had promised the notionless saint, so he definitely had to fulfill his promise. Small Tower taught him a chant about how to condense the 5 elements to form a 5-element body. Furthermore, it also added a forbidden secret technique within this chant. With a thought from itself or Ling Han, they could easily destroy this 5-element body. This was a just-in-case measure. As long as the notionless saint bore no malicious intent, everything would naturally be fine. But what if he wanted to turn the tables around and snatch away the Black Tower the moment he recovered the cultivation level of a saint? Ling Han hesitated slightly, and then passed his agreement on Small Tower's action. One had to keep his guard up against others, so it was best to be cautious. Additionally, if the notionless saint bore no malicious intent, then this preventive measure would never be activated in future when Ling Han's cultivation level also advanced into the Genesis tier, as he naturally would not need to take this to heart any longer. As long as the raw materials were ready, condensing a 5-element body would become very easy. Very soon, Ling Han had built a new body, then used a certain power of the Black Tower to activate it, and this body now possessed a powerful vitality. Without a soul, it could not be considered a living being, but it was the best object to possess. With a thought, Ling Han built another body like this. This one was prepared for the Azura Demon Emperor. Senior, this is the 5-element body I promised you, Ling Han said, and placed this body underneath the reincarnation tree. The ball of light that the notionless saint had taken form in trembled wildly. Though he had long since prepared himself mentally, when this moment truly came, even he, a saint, would feel uncontrollably moved and excited. However, a saint was a saint, after all. He had endured who knew how many trials and hardships, and quickly calmed his heart. With a flash, the ball of light that he had taken form in had sank into this body. A finger of the 5-element body slightly moved. Suddenly, his eyes opened, and the upper half of his body was erect. Now, this was the notionless saint. He raised a hand and looked at it in excitement, an expression of wild happiness appearing on his face. Even if he was a saint, he was still unable to make his damaged soul possess another and come back to life. Now, he could feel that he was weak but filled with vitality. Though this body had been built from the 5 elements, it was not much different from a mortal body. Presently, the notionless saint was only an ordinary mortal. However, this body possessed unlimited possibilities. He could cultivate to the Shattering Void tier, Heavenly Body tier, or even Genesis tier. Furthermore, with a thought of the notionless saint, an incredibly majestic aura immediately surged out of him. This was the aura of the Genesis tier. Within the Black Tower, Ling Han naturally needed not fear the aura of Genesis tier, but he could acutely sense that the notionless saint was actually strong in appearance, but was weak in reality. This was indeed the aura of a saint, but there was not the slightest destructive power contained in it. It could only be used as a scare tactic. If he encountered a rash hothead that moved with complete disregard, then this notionless saint would definitely be pummeled to a bundle of wounds and bruises, exposing his true self completely. There was nothing that could be done about it. At the time, the notionless saint had refined himself, and merely left behind a ball of pure experience, and the body he possessed now was a mortal body as well, so he naturally could not possibly have the slightest bit of the might of a saint anymore. Being able to have this kind of aura as a scare tactic was already quite good. Senior, recover your cultivation level as soon as possible. Ling Han left behind some alchemical pills. With how bountiful the natural resources and extraordinary the effects of godly medicine in the immortal realm were, it would be enough to help the notionless saint return to the Mountain River tier in the shortest amount of time possible. After the Mountain River tier, the notionless saint possessed a complete set of cultivation experience, so he would only have to accumulate some origin power, and his cultivation level naturally would soar up quickly. All right. Go on, this lord, this old fellow, the notionless saint was a little overexcited that he didn't even know how to address himself anymore. Go on, go on. I need to go into seclusion to cultivate. At least I have to cultivate to Mountain River Tier first. Ling Han smiled, and summoned the Azura Demon Emperor with a thought. My noble master, what is your command for summoning this incredibly loyal little Azura? The Azura Demon Emperor said in his most bootlicking voice. His eyes were bright. Master had broken through to the heavenly body tier. This speed was inconceivable. Naturally, the more awesome his master, the more he could use his powerful connections as an intimidation. Hence, in front of Ling Han, he put on his humblest attitude to gain Ling Han's favor and trust. Ling Han tossed out the 5-element body, and said, "This will be your body from now onwards. Work hard on cultivation." Without another word, the Azura Demon Emperor immediately entered into the body. To him, Ling Han's words were akin to a royal decree. Master, why is this body so weak? However, he was immediately shocked. He had initially thought Master had given him another powerful body, but this body was pitifully weak. Of course it's weak. This is a mortal body, Ling Han said, smiling. Ah, the Azura Demon Emperor was filled with confusion. Ling Han said, though this body is not powerful, it possesses true vitality and life. If you cultivate with this body, you can obtain endless possibilities. Though it is very weak at the moment, I believe that you would be able to surpass your current cultivation level without taking too long. Furthermore, you are a spirit of the netherworld, yet possess a body of the immortal realm. By nature, you would be able to communicate with both realms, and in future, it is very possible that you could grasp the regulations of the two realms at the same time, and break through to the Genesis tier. Only now did realization dawn on the Azura Demon Emperor. He almost broke out into tears, and said, "Thank you for your concern and care, Master. How is this little Azura deserving of such high hopes from Master? This little Azura will definitely strive to the utmost until my dying day." Naturally, these were merely empty words. Only he himself knew how much of what he said was truth and how much was false. It was an incredibly hard thing to become a saint, and he was supposed to climb a level higher than that. The Azura Demon Emperor naturally did not have that much confidence in himself. His ambitions were very simple. Be a good dog for Ling Han so he could bite anyone he wanted anywhere he liked. Ed was filled with confidence in Ling Han, and thought that Ling Han would definitely be able to become a saint in the immortal realm, and if he entered into the celestial realm, he would also definitely be capable of becoming a powerful figure. Ling Han couldn't help but be amused, though his expression did not change. He coldly uttered, "Work hard on your cultivation. If I discover that your rate of advancement is slower than the other side, I will murder you." Ah! The Azura Demon Emperor howled. It should be known that the notionless saint had once been an existence of Genesis tier, and even if both of them were now presently starting from the beginning all over again, the latter's rate of advancement would definitely surpass his. Then wouldn't he definitely be dead? "Master," he exclaimed miserably, his face filled with ingratiation. "If you have the time to curry favor, why don't you make the most of your time to cultivate?" Ling Han humphed. Oh. Azura Demon Emperor could only nod and race back to the roots of the reincarnation tree to cultivate. It was time to seek out the 5 sects for an accounting. Ling Han walked out of the plains, and flew up into the skies. What had been a deep abyss in the past was no longer a problem to the present him. The evil beast that had released a pulling power had already been killed, and he soon arrived on the ground surface. Chapter 1340 Arriving at Heaven's Sword Palace. More than 6 years had passed. In this period of time, some great elites had come to investigate the situation. There had even been 2 saints who came personally. They were the Stone Emperor's father and the North Emperor's master, respectively, but they did not discover anything out of the ordinary. The strangeness should have to do with that ancient coffin, but now that the ancient coffin had shattered, even saints would not be able to extract any kind of clue from it. Hence, after the many elites died, there had once been a period of furor in this place, but it very soon returned back to a peaceful state. By now, things had once again returned to the usual rhythm of the two-realm battlefield, and that was killing others, earning merit points, and gathering some realm spirit stones while they were at it. Ling Han strolled around. He no longer had any equal opponent in this place. As long as they had not exceeded the Eternal River tier, his present abilities would be able to handle even one in the high extreme of the Heavenly Body tier without any problems. He journeyed on in silence, and returned to Wolffang City. He closed his account of merit points, and took out a large amount of alchemical pills to be sold, with all of the income being used to trade for level 8 godly metal. However, level 8 godly metal was really very expensive. Others would only need about the size of a palm, or at most about the size of a human head, to forge any god tool that they wanted. But in Ling Han's case, the divine demon sword was completely unreserved in swallowing the godly metal, so he required an ocean's worth of it. He had really gotten himself a master. Thankfully, the Black Tower had now opened up to its 5th floor, with the 5 elements completed, and basically formed a world of its own, so it could slowly produce various materials in large amounts. As long as Ling Han was given enough time, he could still improve the divine demon sword up to celestial level. With regards to time, it might be tens of thousands of years, or could be several 100 million years. Even Small Tower could not say for sure how far the Black Tower had developed by this point, because the Black Tower was still in a state of serious damage, and was still far from recovering to its prime condition. Ling Han did not bother too much. After he had the divine demon sword swallow all the godly metal, he went to grieve for the Purple Moon Divine Maiden. However, what pleasantly surprised him was the fact that the Purple Moon Divine Maiden actually had not died. As it turned out, the Purple Moon Divine Maiden had only sent out a sliver of her divine sense into the underground abyss at the time. Though that sliver of divine sense had been destroyed, causing her to suffer a certain injury, compared with the other Eternal River tier elites, she was much better off. Ling Han was not qualified to pay a visit to the Purple Moon Divine Maiden. After he found out the news, he laughed long and loud, and began to make his way back to the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire. After breaking through to the Heavenly Body tier, Ling Han's speed was naturally even faster than before. Furthermore, the ability to fly allowed him to ignore all obstacles posed by the terrain, which was more suitable for a long journey. After a mere 10 days later, he had arrived at the mountain entrance of the Heaven's Sword Palace. He chose Heaven's Sword Palace as his first stop because his disciple, Jiang Yifeng, was here. The Heaven's Sword Palace was a city, in fact. This city was called Heaven's Sword City. The Heaven's Sword Palace occupied 2/3 of the area of the whole city, and the remaining third was occupied by subsidiary establishments of the Heaven's Sword Palace like various restaurants and inns, as well as those people who made a living in these places. The Heaven's Sword City was huge. Even though the Heaven's Sword Palace was only a Sun-Moon tier-level force, the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire was really much, much too big. Even Sun-Moon tier-level forces could occupy a considerably large territory, and there was not much distance between the 5 great sects either. Their territories were connected with each other, and bordered on one another. Ling Han did not rush. He walked all on his own, and soon arrived at the main doors of the Heaven's Sword Palace. Though he called them the main doors, it was actually merely an arc-shaped ring. There was no actual doorway or doors, which made it appear very imposing. However, the absence of doors did not mean just anyone could go in. There were 8 disciples standing at the main entrance on guard duty, and each of them held a weapon. They all stood ramrod straight with puffed-up chests, using a disdainful gaze to sweep over the people walking to and fro, and appearing to be very aloof and remote. In the Heaven's Sword City, the Heaven's Sword Palace was the most supreme immortals. These 8 people were all in the Shattering Void tier, and in a small world, this was practically a deployment that could scare one to death. Powerful Shattering Void tier elites were actually degraded to acting as guards. But in the immortal realm, this was too ordinary. In fact, this even showed how poverty-stricken this place was. For example, the private guards of Empress Luan Xing were all in the Mountain River tier, and the chief guard was even a heavenly body tier elite. Ling Han curbed his aura, and did not expose his identity and killing intent at first. He wanted to see how much Jiang Yifeng had changed, and whether it was necessary to break the latter's cultivation. When they saw Ling Han approach, the 8 disciples all simultaneously shouted, "Halt!" However, though Ling Han had restrained the majority of his aura, as a powerful heavenly body tier elite, it would be incredibly frightening even if he just leaked out the slightest bit of his aura. Hence, these 8 disciples dared not be rash, or they would have long since drawn their weapons against Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "I want to see Jiang Yifeng." "You know Founder Jiang, sir?" one disciple asked. He seemed to be the leader of the 8 people. Ling Han thought for a moment, and then said, "I can be considered an old friend." The 8 disciples immediately appeared reverent. Jiang Yifeng was the genius of the Heaven's Sword Palace. Though he had come from a small world, he had only used less than 10,000 years to advance into the Sun-Moon tier, and became a pillar of support for the Heaven's Sword sect. This was a story of legend and inspiration, encouraging every disciple to work hard and attempt to become the second Jiang Yifeng. Thus, when Ling Han said he was Jiang Yifeng's old friend, these disciples naturally looked respectful. "May I ask how we should address you so we can inform Founder Jiang, sir?" the disciple in the lead asked. "Han Lin," Ling Han answered, smiling. "Please wait momentarily, sir." That disciple told the remaining 7 disciples to receive Ling Han well, while he himself turned around and quickly walked into the palace. If this allowed him to gain Founder Jiang's favor so the latter could guide him a bit on his cultivation technique, then wouldn't that be a colossal fated opportunity for him? He scrambled off, the 7 people left behind all looking enviously at him. After a long while, that disciple was seen coming back from the distance, and there was a young girl dressed in red by his side. She was very beautiful, with a snow-white complexion, her long, black hair cascading down her shoulders, and her large eyes filled with mischief. The 2 very soon came near enough, and that disciple hadn't even begun to say anything when the young girl in red circled around Ling Han, sizing him up, and then asked, "I heard, you are my father's old friend?" This was Jiang Yifeng's daughter? Ling Han smiled. Going by that theory, this girl could be considered his grand disciple. His son wasn't even as old as this girl, and he had actually become a grandmaster, which was quite odd. He calmly said, "That's right. But why have I never heard father say that he has an old friend by the surname of Han?" The young girl crossed her arms behind her back, and circled to stand behind Ling Han. Then, she suddenly stuck out her head. "Are you lying and actually do not know my father?" Ling Han thought for a moment, then suddenly folded his hands, and displayed a palm technique. This was something that he had once taught his 4 disciples. He had obtained it from within an ancient site. It had been a very arduous process, so the master and his 4 disciples had spent great amounts of effort and time to memorize this palm technique, and it was probable that only the 5 of them knew this technique in the whole world. Though this could not be considered any powerful martial arts technique in the immortal realm, if Jiang Yifeng had still thought of him as a master, he would definitely have passed this on to his daughter. This had already surpassed the range of a martial arts technicite, was rather a form of reminiscence. How do you know Cold Wind Palm?" The young girl dressed in red was very shocked. Chapter 1341 Uncle, are you very good at fighting? Ling Han smiled slightly, and asked, "Is this enough to prove that your father and I know each other?" The young girl in red was mischievous and circled around Ling Han one more time, and then asked, "Where are you from, and why are you looking for father? Is it because you can no longer carry on where you are originally from? If that's what you think." Ling Han was naturally not going to drop down to the level of his grand disciple. He was still feeling rueful. Whichever angle he looked at it from, his young and handsome self wasn't at all reminiscent of a patriarch. "Do you dislike talking?" The young girl was unwilling to let him off. "How do you know my father?" He. Ling Han merely smiled, and did not answer. He realized that this girl was a little bit of a pest. Come with me. The girl blinked her eyes, and mischief flashed through her gaze. Ling Han saw this, yet was completely uncaring. At present, his abilities were enough to suppress the entire Heaven's Sword Palace, and in the face of absolute sword intent, no matter how many tricks this girl played, it would be meaningless. The girl turned around and led the way, whilst Ling Han followed behind. I say, uncle, are you any good at fighting? The young girl asked with slight anticipation. I should be quite capable. Ling Han did not pretend to be modest, as that was indeed the truth. Hee, you were the one who said it. A mischievous smile flashed over the young girl's face as she led Ling Han to stand in front of a courtyard. She obviously did not have any good intentions, as she immediately shot out a foot in a kick. Bang, the two big doors were forcibly kicked open by her foot. Obviously, the quarters of disciples of the Heaven's Sword Palace were not protected by a formation. Otherwise, even if she had been in the Mountain River tier, it would not have been easy to kick the doors open either. Ling Han knew that this young girl was planning to use him as cannon fodder. He did not take it to heart, though. In the first place, the reason why he had come to the Heaven's Sword Palace was to cause great trouble and disband this sect. There was nothing wrong with starting from this step. Furthermore, if he made enough of a commotion, Jiang Yifeng naturally would appear as well. Jiang Qiaoling, it's you again. An angry shout was heard from inside the courtyard, and 7 people practically rushed out at the same time, all of them looking fierce and demonic. Jiang Qiaoling was naturally the name of the girl in red, Jiang Yifeng's daughter. She pretended to be stunned, and immediately dodged to hide behind Ling Han. Then, she stuck out her head, and said, "Do you all want to bully me? Humph, this is my uncle, and he's extremely good at fighting." Ha ha ha. When the 7 people looked at Ling Han, they all laughed loudly, appearing to be completely disdainful and uncaring. Ling Han had curbed his aura, and from mere appearances, he looked extremely ordinary. If one were to say he looked handsome, what use was that to 7 men? Moreover, he was not the type that was earth-shatteringly handsome either. Jiang Yifeng, on the other hand, was a top-grade beauty, or he would not have managed to steal the heart of a noble daughter of the Heaven's Sword Palace either. Uncle, look, these people are looking down on you. Didn't you say you were quite good at fighting? Teach them a lesson. Jiang Qiaoling fanned the fires of both sides, and called Ling Han uncle without the slightest care. One of the 7 people, a man wearing a red headscarf, said, "Jiang Qiaoling, young Master Ling really likes you. Furthermore, the 2 of you are well matched. One is the descendant of great ancestor Yang, whereas the other is the descendant of great ancestor Ling, so the 2 of you are definitely a match made in heaven. Please, Ling Yifeng is who knows how many years older than me. Previously, he liked my mother and wanted to marry her, and now he likes and wants to marry me. Yo, just the mere thought of it gives me goosebumps, so disgusting." Jiang Qiaoling crossed her arms over her chest, looking incredibly disgusted. Even if I have to marry someone, would rather marry this uncle. She still did not forget to pull some hostility over to Ling Han. It was definitely deliberate. "And who are you?" the red headscarf asked Ling Han. "My surname is Ni, and my name is Ye," Ling Han said carelessly. When he said this, Jiang Qiaoling suddenly spluttered in laughter. She covered her mouth with one hand and was shaking with laughter. The red headscarf's brain was not as fast as Jiang Qiaoling's. He mumbled Ni a few times before he heard the person next to him point out, "Brother Bao, he's taking advantage of you and calling himself your grandfather." Fuck. The red headscarf immediately jumped up and glared at Ling Han. "Are you tired of living already? You even dare to take advantage of me? Oh, are you very strong?" Ling Han asked calmly. Not strong in the slightest," Jiang Qiaoling hurriedly said. "He is just a dog of Ling Yifeng, in the medium extreme of the Mountain River tier. Oh right, uncle, you couldn't possibly be unable to defeat even this kind of trash, right?" "What if I can't?" Ling Han asked, smiling. "Then you'd be in big trouble because I have only just advanced into the Mountain River tier, and would not be able to save you at all. Jiang Xiaoling stuck out her tongue. You had better protect your face as much as possible. I trust they would not dare beat you to death. This, she indeed was Jiang Yifeng's daughter. The first thing she thought of in a fight was protecting her face. Speechless, Ling Han shook his head, and said, I do not have the habit of being beaten. What a coincidence, neither do I. Looks like we're choir suited for each other. Jiang Xiaoling elbowed Ling Han. Humph, then I'll just choose your face to hit. The red headscarf took the initiative to step out, aiming a fist right at Ling Han's face. Ling Han's feet moved, and this fist immediately missed. Then, he lightly used his leg in a hooking motion, and the red headscarf immediately stumbled onto the ground. He had used strength very intelligently in this movement, making use of the force the red headscarf used in punching, transforming it into the force of his impact on the ground. With the heavy crash, the red headscarf landed solidly and dramatically on the ground. Brother Bao. The other 6 people hurriedly went to help the red headscarf up. It could be seen that this guy's whole face was covered in blood and dirt. As it turned out, he had actually broken his 2 front teeth on a hard rock when he had landed on the ground. Firstly, this was because the impact was too strong, and secondly, it was because he had not channeled any origin power to protect himself. Otherwise, he would not have been so miserable. Yo, you had your face smacked now. Jiang Xiaoling immediately started clapping, then turned to Ling Han, and said, Uncle, you're so awesome. Ling Han shrugged, and said, It has nothing to do with me. I didn't hit anyone. The red headscarf and his companions were in a rage. You called this having nothing to do with you? If you had not stretched out your leg to trip him, would the red headscarf end up like this? We attacked together. Humiliated, the red headscarf was in a rage, and with a wave of his hand, he took the lead to charge towards Ling Han. All 7 of them were fierce, and did not become wary of Ling Han due to how the red headscarf had eaten a loss just now. In their eyes, it was the red headscarf himself who had been too careless, and that was why Ling Han managed to trip him up, resulting in him breaking 2 of his front teeth. Jiang Xiaoling was very good at fanning the fires, and it was naturally impossible for her to involve herself in this. She quickly broke into a run, calling out, Uncle, go. Go. Shwa, shwa, shwa. Fists, palm strikes, sword chi, saber chi. There were some who used fists and palm strikes, and others used sabers or swords among the 7 people, and they attacked him from all sides. Ling Han crossed his arms behind his back, his feet moving, handling the 7 people's attacks with ease and skill. Not only that, he had even deliberately guided the 7 of them to attack one another through movements. Suddenly, the 7 shouted and quarreled, appearing incredibly chaotic. Together, MC is saying Nia, i.e. your grandfather, which is equivalent to being hella full of himself while being disdainful of the addressee. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.